very good morning to you. It is 7 a.m. and this is Mornings with me, Kamali, Melbourne. Here's how we're looking. We report from Israel on the West Bank settlement economy as calls grow in Britain for a complete embargo of goods coming from occupied Palestinian land. We hear from women in Britain and Europe who are vehemently anti-immigration and examine the influence they have in shaping opinion. After an historically hot and dry summer, Britain's brace for El Nino with a stark warning coming from the Met Office. Prince Harry and several others set to find out later how much they have to pay in legal costs after losing their High Court battle against the publisher of the Daily Mail. And we'll see what's making headlines in today's newspapers with the political commentator Benedict Spence. Hello, good morning. Thanks for being with us. Now, the United Kingdom considers Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank illegal, but that has not stopped their produce making its way to our supermarkets. Palestinian farmers say that their land and water is being taken by Israeli settlers and that they struggle to compete with settlements which have far greater access to international markets. Now, the government here is coming under increasing pressure to introduce an outright ban on trade from the occupied territories, as our international correspondent Diana Magnay now reports.
We've seen terrible scenes recently of Israeli settlers laying siege to Palestinian homes in the West Bank and a huge surge in settler violence. It's caused international outcry, but there's been no change in policy towards Israel and certainly no change to the violence on the ground. One of the topics that's being hotly discussed in Westminster and Whitehall, also in the EU, is whether to ban all trade with settlements which are considered by the UK illegal under international law.
Spain has banned imports from settlements in the West Bank. Britain has more responsibility here than Spain. Unlike Britain, Spain was never a colonial power here.
Abdul Karim Fouka has seen a lot in his 73 years. Israel's seizure of the West Bank in 1967 and the huge expansion of settlements since then through his family's farmland. And he has little hope of change.
At my age, I can see that our situation is not good at all. Not good at all. The young people will either go to prison or be killed. That is the future we are talking about.
In the lush Jordan Valley, you can see the promise of this land. Date plantations ripe for harvest. This is rich agricultural soil. Area C, the economic heart of the settlement enterprise. Land and water fiercely contested, but for Palestinians, a losing battle.
Yeah, over there, the last structure in the top, that's the settlers' outpost.
Rashid Kouderi's village of Berdala is hemmed in by Israeli outposts, one on every hilltop.
Many times they go in the settlers during the night and destroying our water pipeline, the water tubes.
Yeah.
And when we go in the morning to water our plant, our stuff, it's broken.
He has plenty of videos like this of armed Israeli settlers goading Palestinian farmers, spilling their precious water right in front of them. The logic is simple. Control the water and you control the people, their ability to farm and to survive. In the nearby settlement of Mehola, vibrant citrus groves. Water's not a problem here. Mehola was the first agricultural settlement that Israel set up after 1967, and we understand that some of the produce from here does go to the EU. We don't know if it goes to the UK, and that is from eyewitnesses who say that they were told that particular areas had to have a particular fertilizer or agrochemical on it because it was for export to the European Union.
A lot of that produce, it's grown on stolen land.
After a 4-year investigation, the legal group Global Echo believes that 1 in 6 shipments into the EU contains settlement products, disguised as Israeli goods. The stats for the UK aren't clear, but the only penalty for settlement imports is that they pay a standard tariff. In a written statement, the government told Sky News, "We have given clear advice to UK businesses that they should not engage in economic activity in illegal settlements and warn them of the reputational and potentially legal consequences of any such activities." But the sense from Palestinians on the ground is that they could do more.
They control at least 80% of our land in the Jordan Valley, and they build the settlers' agro-business, and they export it outside to the UK and to Europe. That's why it's very important to stop the whole settlers' products that's going to the UK. This is just a small thing they can do with the UK governorate, and this is what we ask, of course.
Just beyond Mahola, a natural spring reserved for Israeli use. This ancient land is precious to both peoples, its natural resources available to one more than the other. Diana Magnay, Sky News, in the occupied West Bank.
And at 7:15, so in about 10 minutes' time, we'll be speaking to the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Dame Emily Thornberry, all about, as Diana's reporting, what the UK government might well do. Now, hard right movements are, of course, nothing new, but in Britain they are growing, and an increasing number of women have begun getting involved. Concerns over immigration and women's safety dominate debates both here in the UK and in Europe, and some of the ideas being shared by some of these groups can be pretty extreme. Well, our data and forensics correspondent Tom Cheshire is here with us and has been looking into this, haven't you, Tom?
Yeah, and I think, as you say, these are concerns that are shared by lots of people, women's safety. We saw it with that Home Office leaflet for asylum seekers talking about rape and the laws around consent in this country. There was this huge, understandable outcry over that. So we've seen these protests grow up, especially in, when there have been sexual assaults by asylum seekers. But we spent the sort of summer looking at these groups, and there's a sort of a broad range here between people who are really concerned about women's safety and others who want to push it a lot further. I think a good place to start is a group called the Pink Ladies, which is a British group. We also we spoke to a group in Germany as well. There's other groups in Sweden, in France as well. But this is the UK version. I started with them back in April, protest outside the Home Office. This is from that. The Pink Ladies are a decentralised organisation with branches in counties all around the UK.
Alien men from alien cultures with zero respect for our way of life.
Their figurehead is Orla Minahan, one of the organisers of the original Pink Ladies in Epping.
A couple of people, not to sort of name people, but have said here, as part of Pink Ladies, that they wouldn't vote for reform because they hire Muslims. Other people said there shouldn't be any migration because these are third world cultures. I'm not saying you believe that, but does that help your cause?
Of course it doesn't help, but look, ultimately I am not in charge of people's opinions, right? I am here for one specific reason. My specific reason is that these men are coming into this country. Now, even if 1% of them, which is very realistic, 1% of them are, child abusers, rapists, sex offenders, that is too many. Now, we have enough of our own to deal with.
Save our children, no one can argue with that. Correct. As a phrase. I suppose their argument would be that they wouldn't argue with that. How can anyone argue with that? But they would say, is there a risk of demonising immigrants who aren't,
Of course there is.
Yeah.
Of course there is. But that's the thing. The Home Office and the government are responsible for that.
While the Pink Ladies talked about women's safety and fear, others, like Lucy White, take it further, turning those concerns into a broader political argument about migration, identity and the future of Britain. I sat down with her away from the crowds a few days later.
Tease there we'll watch that full chat with Lucy White. You can scan that QR code there on screen to watch Tom's full report. And Tom, look, we saw a bit of there, I think, as you point out, this sort of slight conflict within the grouping, that there are some of them who will express themselves as concerned citizens who are really worried about children's safety and women's safety. But of course, then you have others within the group who are using this as a vehicle to further their political beliefs.
Yeah, and you'll see that if you watch the full piece, which is on YouTube. Lucy White, for instance, would go a lot further than a lot of people we spoke to were just against illegal immigration. Lucy White, for instance, believes that anyone who wasn't here before 1948 shouldn't be in the country.
Wow.
She's worried about what she calls demographic security. Those all exist within it. You saw it with the original Pink Ladies in Epping. So they formed after, you'll remember that story of the horrific sexual assault of a 14-year-old girl. They formed in the basis of that. But at the same time, there were organisers there from parties, established parties that you would describe as sort of far right, who are there to organise. And the other thing you'll see with this as well, especially on social media, the image pointing out is very different from the traditional hard right, far right. It's a lot softer, it's a lot more inviting, it's a lot more welcoming, it's a safe space for women. It's deliberately so. So within that, it might look like this is a great thing to get involved with, but there are people on the scene who want to take it further, who want to maybe take those concerns, legitimate concerns, and say, well, you can go further with this. And so that's what the report is looking at, and the rise of that, the shift to the political right, especially amongst Gen Z women, which we've seen over the last 2 years. That's all in there.
Yeah, and Tom, we're going to speak to you again next hour about how this is playing out in Europe. But just quickly, on the language that we're using, hard right, far right, are we using them synonymously, or are they slightly different?
I think it's a really good question because, we cover a lot of this stuff, and whenever we use the word far right especially, everyone's up in arms. I mean, first of all, they're just descriptive words. There's no sort of pejorative to it. You need to have a way of describing politics which is further to the right of established mainstream, like the Conservative Party and Reform Party. Hard right is maybe a bit softer than far right. But far right itself as well, I think everyone thinks that means you're a neo-Nazi. It includes neo-Nazis, absolutely, but it's also just people sort of further right. So Tommy Robinson, who's not a neo-Nazi, but he would be classed, I think, by most people as far right. Hard right is maybe a bit softer. It reflects the nature of these groups, that it's not there as a sort of fascist organisation or anything like that. It's right-wing, anti-immigrant views. Some of them go a lot further, so that's why the term hard right is a bit broader.
Really good stuff, Tom. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you again next hour. Thank you so much for that. Now, El Nino, it is a term that we're going to be hearing a lot more of pretty soon. Of course, it's a weather pattern that happens every 2 to 7 years and lasts for about 12 months. Now, for Britain, that means a wet autumn and a very cold winter. And today, the Met Office warned that this one could be the strongest in living memory. Well, our correspondent Barnaby Papadopoulos is here for a bit more on this. Barnaby, morning to you. So, look, tell us, probably first, what El Nino actually is and how it's going to impact us.
Yeah, absolutely. So El Nino is a sort of weather phenomenon that occurs in the tropics. And essentially what happens is when sea temperatures in the eastern Pacific rise by about 0.5 degrees Celsius on average, that can cause this phenomenon called an El Nino. Now, in the UK and Western Europe, that can lead to very wet conditions, very stormy conditions. In Southern Africa and Australia, it can lead to drought. Now, the reason why scientists are particularly concerned about this one is that this year that natural warming is estimated to reach more than 3 degrees Celsius. So, well over double that 0.5 degrees Celsius warming that would class a normal El Nino. That's also potentially going to lead to the hottest year on record in 2027. And of course, that heat is then compounded by the effects of climate change, and that's something the Met Office have been speaking about this morning. Professor Stephen Belcher, the Met Office's Chief of Science Technology, had this to say. He said, "This summer we have experienced heat waves across Europe, reminding us of the effects of climate change. This large El Nino is a reminder that natural variations in the climate system are also at play, adding to the stresses of climate change." So we've just had one of the hottest summers on record, the driest July in 190 years, and we could soon be facing a storm that, according to some of these forecasts, could be the most powerful since the 19th century.
Well, Barnaby, do appreciate that, I think. Thank you very much for that reporting. All right, let's go back to our top story now and the call for there to be a complete embargo on goods coming from the occupied territories in Israel and Palestine, making their way here to supermarket shelves. Emily Thornberry, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee and Labour MP, of course, joins us now. Emily Thornberry, good morning to you. Thank you very much for being with us. I trust you have seen the reporting, of course. I know you're fully across this issue. What's the call here? Are we trying to stop all goods coming in from the occupied territories?
Basically, yes. I mean, the international community have agreed that the Palestinians are going nowhere, the Israelis are going nowhere. There need to be two territories, two countries, so that they can live side by side. And what's known as the West Bank is the part that the international community have pretty much unanimously agreed is the area that should be for the Palestinians. And we have a far-right government in Israel which is doing its best to try to extinguish the hope of a Palestinian state by building as many Israeli settlements on that area as possible. And they're about to cut the whole of the West Bank in half. But there is also a level of settler violence which is just the worst we've ever seen, so that tens of thousands of Israelis, of Palestinians are being displaced, either by the Israeli army or by settler violence. I think there's about 6,000 people have been displaced since the year 2000, but also over 1,000 Palestinians have been killed since 2000, and there have been no prosecutions. I mean, there is no control. I've been there myself, and one of the most disturbing things I heard was of a little girl who was a Palestinian who was living on the West Bank, who was approached by settlers who just whispered in her ear and said, "Unless your family moves, your daddy is going to be killed." And then the child completely freaks out and is insisting that they leave. But it is Palestinian land. We have to do something about this.
Okay.
A year ago, my committee said that we should stop selling goods.
Yep.
We should stop allowing the sale of goods from the West Bank in Britain. And the government has yet to do anything about that.
Okay, Dame Emily, how is this call today different from a campaign that you will know has been running for many, many, many years, the BDS movement? That is a campaign that many people on the left of politics and other places have had for a long time, that has faced some criticism, and some will say that hearing this rhetoric now from you might be a little bit too late.
Well, I mean, we have been saying this for some time. There's a difference
as
between
forcefully as you are now, though, Dame Emily, because as you point out, this has been happening.
Yeah. I mean, yes. But let me just make sure that people understand the difference between BDS and what I'm saying. So I'm not saying that we should ban all trade with Israel. What I'm saying is we say that we must acknowledge that this is occupied Palestinian land, and whilst the occupation continues, then goods that come from businesses that are benefiting from an illegal occupation of Palestinian land should not be bought in Britain. It's not too much to ask. And what we must do is introduce a comprehensive ban. The United Nations has a list of businesses that are investing illegally in Palestinian land so that they can be exploited by Israeli settlers. So we need to make sure that we stop those goods, because we've recognized Palestine, but that is not enough by itself. It's only the first step. We have to make sure that we get a Palestinian state. And the reaction of the Israeli government has been to try to extinguish the Palestinian state by building these settlements, by terrifying Palestinians, and by getting them to move out of the area. It's happening right now under our noses. There has been calls for it for a very long time. And frankly, if we don't move now, there won't be a Palestinian state.
How do you think that stopping trade in those areas will bring about the two-state solution, though? Because many will see that the Israeli government, this current government, will just think, well, you know, it's patronising, as Gideon Saar said, some of the statements that have been made, and actually they just will choose not to listen to the UK and others.
Well, they've got elections on the 27th of October, and it will be up to the Israeli people what they do next. Israel is a very divided society, and at the moment, this far-right government is behind in the polls. I think that we need to make it clear that if Israel continues in this course, they will continue to be isolated in this way, that they will continue to be almost a pariah state that is, you know, marginalized, and many of its friends, and Britain is a friend of Israel. But if they continue on this far-right course, I mean, you know, remember, Ben Gvir, who's a minister in this government, has called for the killing of between 30 and 40 Palestinians a night. I mean, it's extraordinary.
Well, he was jailed for racist extremism as well, Itamar Ben Gvir, previously.
Yes, and saying that these people are not human and don't deserve to live. I mean, this is what we're dealing with.
Dame Emily, just another question on this. Do we know how much trade is actually being done? I was looking into this and I couldn't find it. Do you know, as chair of the Select Committee?
No, it's very unclear. And I think part of the reasons I think that the Foreign Office say that they have problems introducing this ban is because some of the goods are hidden as Israeli goods. Now, what I would say is we have to introduce the ban. And frankly, if we catch Israeli goods that are goods that are settlement goods that are hiding as Israeli goods, and therefore we have to widen the ban, then that is, we haven't wanted to do this, but unless the Israelis are clear about which goods come from the settlements and which ones don't, we have to do the best we can. And it may be we will catch other goods as well, but we do have to do something right now.
Well, Dame Emily, sorry to interrupt. I just want to get to a couple of other things because you mentioned it. The E1 settlement, that is,
yes.
The government in Israel there are tendering for businesses to come in to start building those settlements. We've had a joint statement from the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, Canada and Norway on it, against it. No mention here of a ban, though, on goods. Is that a misstep by the government, do you think?
I think, frankly, my committee called for a ban on the goods more than a year ago. A comprehensive ban on goods coming from the West Bank. I think that we should go further, personally.
Have you spoken to the new Prime Minister about it?
Yeah, I've spoken to the new Prime Minister about it. I'm not repeating private conversations. I've spoken to the new Foreign Secretary about it. I've spoken to the old Foreign Secretary about it. I've spoken to the old Middle East Minister about it. I spoke to the old Prime Minister about it. We have been talking to them about it. We have been bringing them before Parliament on a regular basis. They must take action.
I won't ask you to give me the ins and outs of the chat, but can you give me a sense of the tone? Was he sympathetic to your position?
I think, to be fair, there is sympathy for our position from all of the politicians I've just said. They all say, but they're all saying that struggling with the fact that it's difficult. Well, it may be difficult, but I do remember that when Crimea was occupied, we banned all trade with Crimea, but I think that we were still at the time trading with Russia. We have a trade deal with Israel where we give preferential treatment to goods coming from proper Israel, but not from the West Bank. We do seem to be capable of distinguishing between occupied territory and non-occupied territory in Israel and elsewhere. So why can't we do it when it comes to the ban for goods? But I'm sorry, I would also go further, and let me just say this too. I think we should also be looking into stopping companies investing and putting any money into the West Bank, because I think someone has to be funding these new settlements, and we need to make sure that no British money or no money coming through Britain is being used to allow these settlements to happen. We must put our foot down.
Another question on within your booth, and something else, if you won't mind, at the end. But there is reporting this morning in one of the newspapers in the Eye about Andy Burnham and Ed Miliband privately committing to reversing cuts to British foreign aid budget. Have you seen this reporting, and what do you make of that?
I haven't heard this reporting. I would be very interested to see it. I think that
should it be reversed, the cuts that were put in place?
I think that well-spent money internationally is really important, whether it is helping countries to deal with the effects of climate change, which clearly affects the developing world hugely. We have been suffering ourselves this summer, but it's as nothing compared to, for example, sub-Saharan Africa. And if people lose their ability to be able to grow their own food, then they will simply be on the move, and that will undermine all of us. If people lose access to water, if waterways continue to be, to be extinguished, we must do something about this. We have to make sure that we protect the forests, and we need to be able to have a proper partnership with countries that are developing, where we will benefit from a strong partnership and proper trade with these countries.
Dame Emily, I appreciate your patience this morning. Final question, since I have you, because I think it's important. People are talking about this a lot. The coverage of Jason Ade, Dr. Jason Ade, who took his own life last week. Do you think the coverage of him and what happened with him was over the top?
I think the coverage of what happened to him was over the top. I think that they wouldn't have covered it in the same way if, frankly, he had been a white professor who allegations were being made against. I think that the media fed the media, and everybody wanted to have a new angle on the story, and he was hounded. And I think that today the media should be thinking quite carefully about their behaviour and making sure that nothing like this happens again.
So you'll know that at least 130,000 people at last check have signed a petition calling for there to be a full public inquiry. Would you support that?
I don't know whether a public inquiry is the right way forward.
Why not?
I don't know, because I haven't had a chance to think about it properly as to what a public inquiry could do. I mean, we've had Leveson, we had Leveson 1, we were going to have Leveson 2, that got stopped. This is a complex and difficult area. I mean, the last thing, obviously, that the media wants is an inquiry into the media. We need to make sure that whatever it is that we do is effective. So
I'm sorry. It's good and disinfectant, though, isn't it, with these things sometimes?
I mean, listen, yeah, and, you know, I'm sorry to be somebody who on holiday is not able to give you a full and comprehensive answer on this one. But what I can say is that, joking aside, this is a really serious issue, yes. And someone's life was lost, and we should all be ashamed.
Damon, we appreciate your time this morning, as always. Thanks so much for being with us. Now, Prince Harry and several other household names are going to find out later how much they're going to have to pay the publisher of the Daily Mail. A string of claims made against Associated Newspapers Limited, brought by the Duke of Sussex and others, were dismissed by a High Court judge earlier this year. They claimed the publisher, those who brought the case, claimed the publisher used unlawful activities to gather information about them. The newspaper denied that was true. And there are questions this morning about how much Harry and Meghan's return to the UK that was announced when they come back later this month will cost for their security and who's going to pay for it. As for how welcome they'll be, that for some remains to be seen. Now, polling suggests a third of Brits are against them coming back, 20% are in favour, but most just don't seem to know what they think. Our royal correspondent Laura Bundock has more.
For Prince Harry, the biggest block to bringing his family home has been security. He wants police protection, and we don't know if it's been sorted. Even the PM won't comment.
This is a private matter. It's a matter for Harry and for Meghan, and we wish them well in the move that they're making.
But it's not a private matter for Harry and Meghan. Publicly funded security is decided by a committee working under the Home Office. It assesses threats and high-profile people. That's why Taylor Swift had police protection here. In a statement, the Home Office said, "It is our long-standing policy not to provide detailed information on those arrangements, as doing so could compromise their integrity and affect individuals' security." But security aside, many are asking why, after all the upset, they're coming back. Harry isn't homesick, but he wants his children to understand his homeland. They're both enrolled in schools here for a British education. And it seems the Sussexes have been emboldened by recent trips, from their time in Australia to Harry's visit here in July. Those who know him well are thrilled he's heading home.
I think it's going to be good for the kids because it will enrich their lives by seeing their own family heritage, and it will also enrich the King's life by having his grandchildren around as well.
Where that'll be, we don't yet know, but it won't be a royal residence or in London. It's unlikely to be Windsor, William and Catherine's hometown. Relations there remain strained. The King, who's holidaying at Balmoral, only heard the news on Sunday. Pleased, we're told, he can see them more.
But he is also adamant changing their status as non-working royals is a non-starter. They can't be half in and half out. And yet their charitable work looks strikingly similar.
Harry very much focused on the Invictus Games in Birmingham next summer, and Meghan continuing with her causes, as well as commercial work with her As Ever brand. Some say their arrival justifies publicly funded security.
I think he should get protection of a sort, and I think his family should get the protection if they come to be residents in the United Kingdom. And I think, you know, from a sort of moral point of view, I think the mistakes of the past can very much paralyse the future.
Whether the public agree is another matter. Their ratings in the royal popularity polls remain low. This homecoming is a risk for the Sussexes and potentially the wider royal family. Laura Bundock, Sky News.
Delighted to say Jackie has joined us. Good morning to you, Jackie. I haven't seen you for a little while. You well?
Yeah, it's like Christmas.
It is. We're back together.
I know. Oh, I was talking about the Premier League.
Oh, right.
Oh, you were talking about us. We are going to be talking about the reigning champions, Arsenal, kicking off the Premier League season with newly promoted Coventry City tonight.
Well, Jackie is still with us, of course, because we weren't talking about us being back together, being like Christmas. You're talking about the Premier League season, weren't you?
I know, it's exciting. It's all new, although it literally is about 3 months ago since it all ended. But tonight, Arsenal Coventry, so you've got the Premier League champions versus the Championship champions. And, you know, it doesn't seem very long since this happened at Crystal Palace and Arsenal lifted the trophy. You have to say, when they played the Community Shield the other day, they looked like champions. They looked free. They looked confident. And everyone really took notice of how they beat Man City and said, OK, they're going to go back to back, which I think is a very dangerous thing to say.
Because started yet.
Well, I know, and also no one ever does it. And I remember last year everyone said, oh, just give the trophy to Liverpool. I think I may have said that. And then it all went a bit...
Went quite wrong for them, didn't it?
Pear-shaped for Liverpool. But Coventry, for them, I'm not going to say it's a fairy tale because that would be condescending, but it's 25 years in the Championship. They've waited 25 years to get back to the top flight. In that time, they nearly went out of business. They went down to the 4th tier of English football. They were homeless for a bit. And to all be back for their fans, they don't want to go back down. They want to buck that trend. if you look at the last 9 teams that have come up from the Championship, 7 have gone back down. So it is very hard to stick.
It is hard to stay.
It's very hard to stick. They have spent £130 million in the transfer market, so they are doing everything they can.
I can't tell if that's a lot anymore.
I think it's a lot if you're coming
up like that, yeah.
That shows you're not just doing it for a great sort of fun season, going to all the great grounds. It's like you want to stay there. Let's have a listen to the 2 managers. First of all, Mikel Arteta.
We are very conscious of what it's going to take to deliver that, but I feel the ambition, I feel the desire, and I feel the ability and the conviction around the team that we can do it.
I want them to go in with an excitement and a bravery about how they contest the game. The last thing I would want at the end of the game is to sit there and go, we didn't quite do enough. We let them take control in terms of the mental side of the game. We need to go and compete in the game.
Yeah, looking forward to this.
He must be really excited.
He must be buzzing.
Having played in it for so long with Chelsea.
Have the challenge.
I have brought a team here.
And it's good to have another decent Midlands team back in the Premier League, I would say. And you you've got a little connection with Coventry, haven't you, sir?
Well, I grew up in Coventry, so I've got a lot of friends who'll be watching that match tonight, a lot of school friends, cheering on the Sky Blues, and I'll be cheering on Arsenal. That's just how it goes. Have you heard the story about Hegebo? I find this story really interesting. So, West Brom player been given a 2-match suspension for this.
Oh.
And you're probably thinking, what's
it?
wrong with that?
What did he do?
It's a goal. So, what it has been ruled as, he did successfully deceive a match official by handling the ball. So if you look, it does come off his hands.
Handball!
And no one saw it.
What?
They don't have VAR in the Championship, so there was no referee saw it, no linesman saw it, goal stood. But retrospectively, they've banned him.
They've banned him?
Yeah, for two matches. So West Brom are appealing it, saying, well, it deflected off another part of his body. I mean, what is he meant to do in that situation? Anyway, I just thought it was interesting that this is now happening. Oh, we'll look at it afterwards, and even though nothing happened at the time, this is what we're going to do. Bit of tennis news.
Go on.
I thought this was great news yesterday. Did you hear Carlos Alcaraz is back for the US Open? It's been a while, 4 to 5 months out with a wrist injury, and I think tennis has really missed him. You know, he's such a charismatic character, and it's not as fun when you've just got Yannick Sinner winning everything.
Maybe fun for Sinner, he can win stuff.
Yeah, although he's playing this week, to be fair. The US Open's going to have the biggest prize fund in history when it starts at the end of the month. Guess how much, Kamali?
Oh, my goodness. I don't know what they normally get.
For the
3
winner.
million.
Close. £4.03 million.
That's not too bad.
Winner. And if you lose first round, 102,667. So over nearly £103,000. First round loser.
And your boy's playing, isn't he? Old Arthur. He's made it.
Yeah, Arthur will be playing his first US Open. Exciting for him.
Yep.
Yesterday, just absolutely dwarfing that money in terms of what the person earns in a year is Max Verstappen. So Max Verstappen signed a new deal with Red Bull. He was flirting, we thought, with McLaren sort of mid-season. Am I going to jump ship? I don't really like this car. And it was all a bit of a ruse. So he has extended his contract until 2030. Guess how much he's on a year?
OK, so tennis players winning a tournament get 3 million. Max Verstappen gets...
They get 4, actually.
4 million, sorry.
No, per year, Max Verstappen...
20 million.
£70 million.
70?
Yes.
70
million pounds a year.
Not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad. But have a look at the way they announced this. I saw this on Instagram. It kind of tickled me. I thought it was quite funny. Have a look. What do you think?
It can't be right. It really can't be right. Max, does it look right to you?
No, there's meant to be a hyphen in there. Ah, yeah, of course, yeah.
First time. No, I get it.
I know, because you were talking.
That's not Damon Hill, though, doing that.
No.
Does it not look like Damon Hill to anyone else? That's just me. Okay, fine.
No. It's quite funny.
Yeah.
Cricket yesterday. I know you're going to do the weather. Tell me, when you do the weather, tell me
Yes.
what it's going to be like in Yorkshire, in Headingley,
I'll
specifically.
find out, right.
Because yesterday the weather was a real thing, because the cricket didn't start till 2:45 because of the rain. And, you know, the England cricketers must have been thinking, we have had blazing sunshine all summer. When it comes round to our test match against Pakistan, we're sitting in the dressing room. Anyway, eventually they got out. They played really well, England, yesterday. Finished the day 3-6, 6 for 8, a lead of 195. Joe Root, Mark II as captain, was really good. But what do you think about this for something quite spooky? That's him getting out, I'm not sure about that. But Joe Root scored 66 on his 66th Test match as captain, and he wears the jersey 66.
I mean, 3 sixes is the sign of the... So we're not going to do that, but the 2 sixes, that's
But anyway,
cool.
he did really well. Harry Brook as well was very, very tiny bit short of getting his century on his home ground. So he got 91 off 93 balls, Harry Brook. Played really well. So they resumed today, but you're going to tell me about the weather.
I will. I'll check on
whenever they resume. Hopefully it'll be early this morning. And they're in
Are they Bazballing or are they playing Test cricket?
I think it's a little bit of a mixture.
Okay.
Well, 91 off 93 balls is a bit Bazball-y, isn't it? And we should quick mention Rory McIlroy had a terrible week last week. He finished 66th last week at the Jude Classic. But he is leading the BMW Championship after the first day, 6 under par. He apparently went away with his team, did some work, did a lot of work, and has put it all back. Put it all back together. So he will play today as well.
Good to see Rory playing well. More sixes in that as well.
I know.
Weird.
It is a little tiny bit spooky. They're not connected.
No, absolutely not. All right, I'm going to let you know what the weather's like at Headingley in this weather broadcast.
Good one.
Coming up next, and we'll see you next hour. Thanks, Jax.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
All right, it's going to be a bit cooler this weekend with heavy showers in places, but the weekend will be mostly fine. I'm told it's going to be about 12 degrees in Headingley. There is rain in the forecast, but sunshine at 2. So expect sunshine this morning, while there's rain around in different parts of the country. They're going to be more scattered than yesterday. Ireland, Northern Ireland, North East England, Wales and the West seeing the most of the rain, so the cricket could well be affected. The rain will bring with it a risk of hail and thunder for the southwest. It's going to be on the cool side with temperatures below average for many.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
So a little bit of rain in the forecast for Headingley, but probably
should be all right.
I think it'll be all right. Jackie, thanks. See you soon. Stay with us. Papers coming up next. Benedict Spence will join us once again to take us through the stories in the morning's newspapers.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent based here in Bangkok.
The only way they'll allow elections is if I'm inside jail or killed.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Free, wherever you get your news.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Segal?
I'm Conor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent. Sky News, the full story first.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Haynes, Sky's security and defence editor.
Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
I bet right now you often find yourself asking why. Why was a certain decision taken? Why did something happen? Why did they say or do that? I'm Neil Patterson, and it's my job as a journalist to find out why. Just explain why.
It's a difficult one.
Well, I mean, it's massive.
It's a very, very severe situation.
So if you want to make sense of this complicated world, Sky News' new podcast, This Is Why, is your daily fix. One story every day, and we can find out why together. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
The trauma for everyone who witnessed what happened here hasn't gone away.
Devastation.
Greg Milam, Sky News, Manchester.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Right, it's time to go through the morning's newspapers. We're joined once again by Benedict Spence. Benedict, thanks for sticking around. Most of the papers have coverage of Prince Harry's pending return to the UK. And we're going to start with the coverage here in The Sun. Take us through this.
So this is talk of a meeting at Balmoral between senior members of the royal family, the King, the Prince of Wales, Camilla, the Queen, obviously, and Catherine, and this is to discuss, supposedly, how to approach the return of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, who, as we have all know, it's across every front page this morning, they are returning to the UK, and it echoes a similar summit that was held 7 years ago, when the couple first decided that they were going to leave the UK and go to the United States. And, it all sort of, I think, plays into this idea that actually, I think members of the royal family, and frankly, I think probably the Sussexes as well, don't want this to turn into too much of a hysteria. They don't want it to turn into too much of a circus. Supposedly, at least in part, the Sussexes are coming back because they want their children to attend school in the United Kingdom. So if they're coming because of that motivation, it's not in their interest for this to become a furore. And equally, I think after a difficult couple of years, senior members of the royal family want actually everything going forward to be much more about what the royal family does that's positive, its role in society, its charitable work. And so I suspect you are going to see a much more sort of managed approach to this, very stage-managed approach to this, even though I suspect there is still no love lost between certain members of the family. That hasn't quite been addressed yet. It's all going to be an attempt to calm the waters as much as possible.
I mean, they don't want him coming back to be front-page news consistently. And also, they are meeting at Balmoral. The Sun says it's the summit. It's not like they've been summoned there to. It's an annual thing that they do to get together as a family. So they're always there, but they're obviously with the news, so they will be talking about it. I mean, I guess from an outside perspective, families have their ups and downs, but one would hope that if they are going to be back in the country, they can reconcile.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that would be the first step, being in the same place at the same time. Right. Although being in the same place at the same time is also how they fell out. So, it's not all to say that it will go in that direction. But obviously, one hopes at some point, for the sake of a family, like any family, every family goes through upheavals and tumults. We all know what that's like. Nobody enjoys it. So just on that human level, I think everybody's kind of hoping, listen, let's hope that it's actually a lot calmer this time.
Definitely on the human level, but also sort of political level for the Windsors. They will not want. They've already got, a member of the family who's living in a cottage somewhere, hanging around.
I wonder if he was at the at the family meeting. I don't know, at the window maybe. I'm not sure he can get it.
I'm not sure if he gets invited anymore. But they don't want there to be any more of that.
Well, exactly.
There are questions about the royal family. The younger generation far less enamoured with the royals than older people are. So
yeah, although at the same time, I also think that younger generations of the royal family, Harry and Meghan aside, are actually a lot more astute when it comes to handling these sorts of things. I think actually William and Catherine are pretty savvy, or at least they're advised by pretty savvy people on how it is that you go about and conduct yourselves. And I think that they sort of take the late Queen's sort of approach to heart, which is to try to do as little that's controversial as possible. But there's a slightly more proactive stance here, which is championing certain causes that are important in society. The late Queen didn't talk too much, for instance, about mental health, whereas these ones obviously do. And I think that there is the marrying of those two things, sort of duty is very important, but also picking the right social causes that perhaps politicians or celebrities can't pontificate on in the same way to actually promote those that are non-political in that sense. So actually, I think they're pretty smart on these sorts of things, family feuds aside.
Yeah, family feud aside. And actually, Prince William and Andy Burnham have the same motivation to try and end homelessness. And I wonder whether or not we're going to see those two working together on that goal. Let's move on to the front of The Guardian. Story here, tagged as an exclusive by Kieran Stacey. And it's an interview that Bridget Phillipson gave to a podcast.
Yeah, this is, she's given it with the Guardian podcast, and she's saying that racism and sexism, as the headline, have been normalised in the UK. This is Bridget Phillipson's new role as Equalities Minister, having sort of been a bit battered and bruised by her time in education. No love lost there between her and Kemi Badenoch, for a start, who accused her of being rather spiteful. This is an interesting intervention where she's said, she's focused on two politicians, Nick Timothy of the Conservatives and Robert Jenrick of Reform, to say that actually what they've been saying about, for instance, the worship, Muslims worshipping in Trafalgar Square or diversity in parts of Birmingham are racist. Which, straight off the bat, is, in the case of Nick Timothy, not helpful because it's sectarianism rather than racism, and that's where it slightly falls into sort of, you know, the broader categories of throwing different labels out for different things. But what sort of interests me about this is she's also talking about violence towards women and girls and towards extreme misogyny that you see online. And this is kind of curious because it does tie into the fact that her government is in a little bit of trouble about releasing people early from prison, many of whom are violent offenders, many of whom are convicted of violence against women and girls. And I don't want to therefore say that she is a hypocrite because, of course, she's not making that decision. It is her government. But it does ever so slightly feel to me as though she's trying to get out ahead of a certain story there and try to reframe something on behalf of the government. I think it's very difficult to sort of sit there and say, oh, violence against women and girls, very important, misogyny, very dangerous, very important, when you've got stories about, for instance, releasing prisoners, or indeed about the government handing out little pamphlets to migrants or refugees rather than say, oh, please don't sexually assault people. Yeah, that doesn't come across as being particularly serious. And so I think that a lot of this is about trying to reframe that. I'm not sure it's going to be very convincing, but to be fair, you know, this is part of a, hate that phrase, reset, but Andy Burnham's only been in charge for about a month, so he is having to get ahead of these things. And again, to be fair, it's not Andy Burnham's fault that he's been left with this particular problem about, you know, violence towards women and girls or having to release people early because there's overcrowding in prisons. But I think that's a lot of what this is about, trying to reset, reframe the narrative to say, listen, we are making very difficult decisions, unpopular decisions, and people are suffering, possibly as a result of those decisions, but our hearts are in the right place. Time will tell, obviously, as to whether or not their policies bear that out.
Yeah, and of course, the administration of Keir Starmer had that commitment to end violence against women and girls, or half it within 10 years. I presume that's in the manifesto. That stays for Andy Burnham, of course. It's not in the write-up here on the front, but I wonder if it's in the rest of the
I mean, I didn't see that in the rest of the copy, but there was talk, interestingly, about censorship, online censorship, about, you know, the Online Safety Act and things like that. And again, I think you're going to see a little bit more of that pushing towards censorship of social media platforms. But also, of course, in the wake of the Jason Ardea story as well, that was, you know, a hot topic and potential talk of press censorship, because a lot of people have been blaming the media for covering that in the same way. So I think that this is going to be a bit of a theme that we see going forward.
Yeah, Dame Emily actually not going as far to say there should be a public inquiry, but did say that the coverage she thought was completely inappropriate. Let's move on to this story here in the Eye. It's actually something else they also put to Dame Emily Thornberry a little while ago about reversing cuts to foreign aid.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. It's a really tricky one because, on the one hand, there are many good arguments made for foreign aid spending, one of which, funnily enough, is about when it comes to mass migration or refugees, which, of course, very unpopular in the UK these days. But the argument is often made, well, if you intervene in those countries maybe beforehand, those people don't end up moving over here. But, of course, one of the things in particular that you hear a lot about is, spending money on propping up countries that are dealing with major issues around, for instance, climate change. Well, this is a little bit tricky, given that Andy Burnham has just come in and he said, well, maybe we are going to have to raise taxes later on in the year. They're already quite high, but to pay for things like social care and other things that maybe taxes will rise later this year. To then turn around and say, well, we might have to, you know, we're potentially going to be reversing this. Now, to be clear, there isn't a timeline in place. It's not like he's doing it immediately, but he has reversed on those pledges to cut. So actually what he wants is to return to spending 0.7% of GDP. How can you make the argument about helping other countries with things like climate change and poverty when we are constantly told that there are rising levels of poverty in this country? And also, it's clear for anybody to see who looks out of their window that this country is not prepared to deal with a changing climate. If you turn around to people and say, I'm going to be putting up your taxes to pay for these things, and then say, oh, but by the way, I'm going to be taking a lot of that money and spending it overseas, which we don't actually have a great deal of oversight on, I can see the moral argument, but from a political perspective, I can see why a lot of people would also say, well, what is it exactly that you're spending my money on, that you're telling me we're having to raise? Will we see an improvement on things like water, retention? Will there continue to be droughts in this country? Railways having to be delayed because potentially there's warping on the track because they're not prepared for climate change. Yeah. These are the very real-world effects that people sit there and go, so why is my money going abroad if we can't even do the basics here in the first place?
It does suggest that they have agreed to it. I mean, and this, I guess, this goes into the folder of the things that Andy Burnham's going to do come September, or talk about come September, that might prove to be challenging decisions that are going to be made, because, of course, at the moment you're saying yes and everything's great, but difficult decisions will have to be made eventually. We've only got a minute and a half left, so I'm going to move us through these papers, because I want to get to that one that I promised from last hour about the world's oldest person. Let's move to this one in the Express about bridges, just because I think it might make people chuckle a little bit. Takes through this reporting here.
So this is... there is always these stories. They come out of China every couple of months, is that they've managed to knock down an entire road and rebuild it overnight or something like that. And this is one, this is about a bridge that's been built in just under 2 days, 43 hours.
2 days?
I know, it is impressive, but I suppose when you're a totalitarian state that actually doesn't have to deal with people like, complaining about the noise or anything like that, you do get to do that. Whereas, of course, in Britain, we go far too far the other way, and we never build anything because we take not just people's opinions, but newts and bats and all that sort of thing into account as well.
Newts are important, Benedict.
Do they vote, though? That's the key thing. Perhaps they do. But I would just say, as a thing, I remember the first time that this became sort of a major story was when the Chinese built a hospital in a little city called Wuhan in 3 days, and everybody was sat there going, oh, isn't this magnificent? And then a couple of months later we were going, hang on, why were they building it so quickly? This isn't good.
Don't bring us back to that. And finally, this hour, we've only got 20 seconds, but we're going to bring up these pictures because the King has met the world's oldest person, 117 years old. Oh, congratulations.
After this summer, imagine how exhausted she must be. I feel about 117 after this summer.
Benedict, thank you so much for that. Congratulations to Ethel, and we'll see you all next hour.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
and a very good morning to you. It is 8 o'clock and this is Mornings with me, Kamali, Melbourne. Here are your headlines. After an historically hot, dry summer, Britain braces for El Nino. And there's a stark warning coming from the Met Office. We report from Israel on the West Bank settlement economy as calls grow in Britain for there to be a complete embargo of goods from occupied Palestinian land. We hear from women in Britain and Europe vehemently anti-immigration and examine the influence they have in shaping public opinion. Prince Harry and other famous faces today find out how much they'll have to pay in legal costs after losing their High Court battle against the publisher of the Daily Mail. And we'll take a look at what's making news in the morning's newspapers with a political commentator, Benedict Spence. Hello, good morning, and thank you for being with us. El Nino, it is a term that we're going to be hearing a lot more of in the next few weeks. It's a weather pattern, of course, that happens every 2 to 7 years, and it lasts for around 12 months. Now, for Britain, that will mean a wet autumn and a very cold winter. And today, the Met Office warned that this one could be the strongest in living memory. Well, Professor Stephen Belcher from the Met Office said that this summer we've experienced heat waves across Europe, reminding us of the effects of climate change. This large El Nino is a reminder that natural variations in the climate system are also at play, adding to the stresses of climate change. Well, let's bring in our meteorologist, Joe Wheeler, for a bit more on this. Joe, great to have you with us. So I think we should probably start, morning first of all, we should probably start with what El Nino is.
Right. OK, well, El Nino it's a natural climate phenomenon where unusually warm water across the Pacific changes the heat and the moisture that's released into the atmosphere. That changes atmospheric pressure and the jet stream. And because the jet stream steers weather systems, this is why it can affect parts of the UK. Usually, it mostly affects, well, parts of Peru. That was where it was first noticed. Also is likely to bring some pretty bad conditions to southern parts of Africa, northwestern parts of Australia. But this one looks like being particularly strong. An El Nino is announced when temperatures of the Pacific rise 0.5 above baseline. And this time it looks like being 2 or 3 degrees Celsius. So without this being a forecast, it tilts the odds towards a wetter and a stormier autumn with the possibility of a colder end to winter. So it's that ripple effect. Something that happens thousands and thousands of miles away doesn't directly impact that, but it does steer things towards possibly a slightly different outcome for what we might expect from a British winter.
That warning then from the Met Office as well. That feels to me a little unusual that we're getting these warnings about what's going to come in winter. And is it right as well that El Nino may well mean that next summer is going to be hotter than this one?
It is likely that the global average temperature will rise next year. It doesn't necessarily mean that Britain is going to see its hottest summer ever, but it is increasingly likely. And it could be that 2024 is knocked off its perch. El Nino is a fascinating situation. It was first noticed by the Peruvian fishermen who noticed around Christmas that the waters warmed up and the cold, usually nutrient-rich waters stopped yielding the fish that they were there to catch. Now, they called this El Nino, the boy child, more specifically the Christ child, because it happens around Christmas. And as you say, it was periodic. It would happen now and again. It was much later before scientists started to catch up. One particular scientist was looking at why some places had droughts and others had torrential rain and where that happened. He kind of identified half of the problem. The fishermen had the other half of the problem, and like half the problem, also half the solution. But it wasn't until the 1960s that this was actually given a name, and that was ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. The last scientists noticed how things used to seesaw. So, do you know something? It's not something we talk about hugely often. Yes, it does have impact. We watch El Nino go by, we watch La Nina go by, and for the most part, it doesn't have a huge impact on not only Britain, but also northwestern parts of Europe. This time time, it looks as though it will do. Not least of all because, of course, we've had a record-breaking summer. We've had a drought. There's about 75% of England, all of Wales still in drought. Reservoir levels are low. We've seen some incredibly high temperatures across the summer. Again, record-breaking both in terms of level of temperature, but also the frequency with which we've seen it. And so now to discover that El Nino, they're looking at a 3-degree rise above base level as opposed to 0.5, which is when an El Nino is declared, then obviously, all eyes are upon it. And it's just a question of, what is going to happen then? What are we going to see? Now, we've already seen a bit of a breakdown in the weather. It's looking pretty unsettled through to the end of August. Anything further than that is likely to be lacking in veracity and accuracy, it has to be said. But certainly all eyes will be upon the weather in the early autumn to see what it brings. Because even if it does, well, shall I say, if it brings torrential rain, our ground is now baked so hard, we are now at risk of massive runoff and flash flooding. And of course, the flash flooding will look biblical, which, were it falling on softer ground, probably wouldn't look so bad. But yes, it could cause us some real problems over the next few months.
Indeed. It tipped us down yesterday. It may well have a bit more rain for us today. Jo, really appreciate you, as always. Thank you so much. We'll speak again later on. Thank you.
Cheers.
Now, to the Middle East, and the UK considers Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank illegal, but that has not stopped their produce making their way to supermarkets here. Now, Palestinian farmers say that their land and water is being taken by Israeli settlers, and they're struggling to compete with settlements which have a greater access to international markets. Now, the government is coming under growing pressure to introduce a trade ban on goods coming from those occupied territories, as our international correspondent Diana Magnay now reports.
We've seen terrible scenes recently of Israeli settlers laying siege to Palestinian homes in the West Bank and a huge surge in settler violence. It's caused international outcry, but there's been no change in policy towards Israel and certainly no change to the violence on the ground. One of the topics that's being hotly discussed in Westminster and Whitehall, also in the EU, is whether to ban all trade with settlements which are considered by the UK illegal under international law.
Spain has banned imports from settlements in the West Bank. Britain has more responsibility here than Spain. Unlike Britain, Spain was never a colonial power here.
Abdul Karim Fouka has seen a lot in his 73 years. Israel's seizure of the West Bank in 1967 and the huge expansion of settlements since then through his family's farmland. And he has little hope of change.
At my age, I can see that our situation is not good at all. Not good at all. The young people will either go to prison or be killed. That is the future we are talking about.
In the lush Jordan Valley, you can see the promise of this land. Date plantations ripe for harvest. This is rich agricultural soil. Area C, the economic heart of the settlement enterprise. Land and water fiercely contested, but for Palestinians, a losing battle.
Yeah, over there, the last structure in the top, that's the settlers' outpost.
Rashid Kouderi's village of Berdala is hemmed in by Israeli outposts, one on every hilltop.
Many times they're going, the settlers, during the night and destroying our water pipeline, the water tubes.
Yeah.
And when we go in the morning to water our plant, our stuff, it's broken.
He has plenty of videos like this of armed Israeli settlers goading Palestinian farmers, spilling their precious water right in front of them. The logic is simple. Control the water and you control the people, their ability to farm and to survive. In the nearby settlement of Mehola, vibrant citrus groves. Water's not a problem here. Mehola was the first agricultural settlement that Israel set up after 1967, and we understand that some of the produce from here does go to the EU. We don't know if it goes to the UK, and that is from eyewitnesses who say that they were told that particular areas had to have a particular fertilizer or agrochemical on it because it was for export to the European Union.
A lot of that produce, it's grown on stolen land.
After a 4-year investigation, the legal group Global Echo believes that 1 in 6 shipments into the EU contains settlement products, disguised as Israeli goods. The stats for the UK aren't clear, but the only penalty for settlement imports is that they pay a standard tariff. In a written statement, the government told Sky News, "We have given clear advice to UK businesses that they should not engage in economic activity in illegal settlements and warn them of the reputational and potentially legal consequences of any such activities." But the sense from Palestinians on the ground is that they could do more.
They control at least 80% of our land in the Jordan Valley, and they build the settlers' agro-business, and they export it outside to the UK and to Europe. That's why it's very important to stop the whole settlers' products that's going to the UK. This is just a small thing they can do it, the UK governorate, and this is what we ask, of course.
Just beyond Mahola, a natural spring reserved for Israeli use. This ancient land is precious to both peoples, its natural resources available to one more than the other. Diana Magnay, Sky News, in the occupied West Bank.
Well, earlier I spoke to the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Dame Emily Thornberry, who is calling on the governments to do more.
The United Nations has a list of businesses that are investing illegally in Palestinian land so that they can be exploited by Israeli settlers. So we need to make sure that we stop those goods, because we've recognized Palestine, but that is not enough by itself. It's only the first step. We have to make sure that we get a Palestinian state. And the reaction of the Israeli government has been to try to extinguish the Palestinian state by building these settlements.
Have you spoken to the new Prime Minister about it?
Yeah, I've spoken to the new Prime Minister about it. I'm not repeating private conversations. I've spoken to the new Foreign Secretary about it. I've spoken to the old Foreign Secretary about it. I've spoken to the old Middle East Minister about it. I spoke to the old Prime Minister about it. We have been talking to them about it. We have been bringing them before Parliament on a regular basis. They must take action.
Dame Emily Thornberry speaking to me earlier this morning. Now, hard right movements are, of course, nothing new, but in Britain, they're growing, and an increasing number of women are getting involved. Concerns over immigration and women's safety dominate debates both here in the UK and in Europe, and some of the ideas being shared by some of these groups are extreme. Well, data.
It's here in Dover that some of Britain's sense of identity is formed. The white cliffs, the market's boundary as an island, the small boats that arrive here carrying migrants from abroad. But the voices that shape that identity, that are challenging it, are changing. Increasingly, it's women, including groups like the Pink Ladies, who are leading protests.
Illegal invasion!
Over the last few months, I've been spending time with the women's-only groups that are protesting against immigration. The starting place, they say, is women's and children's safety. But it also goes much further than that.
One straw will break the camel's back, and when that happens, there will be civil war.
This is a different form of right-wing activism with a very different image. Social media is crucial to finding new audiences and recruiting more women to the cause. And it operates across European borders. Some women bridle at being called far-right, others embrace it.
A lot of people frame us as the devil and just think that we're untouchable.
Traitorous governments gave out visas and passports like confetti.
Would I deport the Jewish people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, some of what you'll hear is uncomfortable, some of it is offensive. These groups don't look like the traditional far-right. And for many individual women, that definition simply doesn't fit. Lots of them are simply anti-immigration and vocal about it. But others within their ranks are committed extremists and are happy to exploit that gap.
Please say Tom has joined us now. Scan that QR code and you can watch the full report after we've had the chat, of course. And Tom, look, we saw you there on the beach with this group. Just take us inside sort of the movement and what it's like being amongst them, because as you mentioned there, some within the group seem to profess this desire to protect women, protect children as well. But of course, there are others within some of the groupings that do have more political ambitions.
Yeah, I mean, it is a really broad church in that sense. And so the Pink Ladies is the sort of UK, the biggest group in the UK, and it's a very different energy going to, you know, a couple of their marches compared to if you go to a Tommy Robinson march or something like that. It is more inclusive, it's more welcoming. Everyone is really, really friendly within that. But then sort of the further you go on it, you sort of encounter people who want to go beyond, say, just I'm against illegal immigration, which would be the position of lots of the women we spoke to. And they would say, you know, it's about demographic security. We're being replaced, which is sort of a far-right theory that there's a deliberate plan to alter the demographic makeup of the UK. And I think that's sort of crucial to the whole thing, is when you see a lot of this on social media as well, you saw some of that, it's quite inviting, especially the younger women doing it. It's very sort of TikTok friendly, it's very Instagram friendly, and slightly inoffensive. But when you get a bit further into it with some of these groups, the links, the connections, so there's a German group called Lucreta, who's been classified as an extremist organisation by the state prosecutor. We spoke with them. They obviously reject that to start with. They're very close links to the AFD. Actually, the interesting thing with a lot of this, and a lot of these women, the reason these are women's only groups is they had existed within the traditional hard right, the traditional far right before, and didn't find that a welcoming environment to sort of put feminist issues first. You know, there are other people who'd say women shouldn't have the right to vote. They don't really want to be a part of that for obvious reasons. So they've gone out on their own. So it's a new phenomenon. I think it's quite attractive online. It taps into a lot of valid concerns around immigration and women's safety. We saw the uproar, the understandable uproar over that Home Office sort of pamphlet for asylum seekers. So it's really, really tapping into that. But a lot of people want to take it a lot further than that sort of minimalist position.
Talk to us a little bit about the language as well that we're using around this, hard right and far right. Are they synonymous terms? Are they different?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes the language gets in the way of this. I mean, it's used, and this is certainly the case for far right, it's used as a descriptive term, not a pejorative one, but understandably, people don't like being called far right. I think that's because in their mind it's the sort of equivalent of a neo-Nazi. Now, far right, basically the definition, anything sort of to the right of established mainstream positions. So to the right of conservatives, to the right of reform. I think beyond that is hard right, is far right. It doesn't mean everyone within that is a fascist or a neo-Nazi. It includes those things, but it's just a way of sort of describing it. But I think sometimes it adds heat to the conversation, which does need it. So it's useful for academics to talk about it. And a lot of people, a lot of academics, one of the academics we spoke to, who looks at these women's groups, is happy to describe them as far right in terms of the politics, in terms of the links with, say, Tommy Robinson, people like that. But then when you're talking about individuals, it doesn't fit for a lot of them. So hard right, I think, is a way of kind of bridging that gap. But, you know, if you watch this film, it's sort of 20 minutes long, and I think you get the nuance which these terms you have to use in the brief. They don't quite capture all the different things going on.
How do they describe themselves? Do they think of themselves in that sort of area of politics? Do they think of themselves as holding racist views, as some would say?
No, I mean, I don't think anyone... I mean, it's really interesting. When you're having these... It's really good questions. When you're having these conversations, the last thing anyone wants to be called is racist. I mean, there are some people who don't mind it, and you'll see them in this film as you know, we go through the sort of process. But a lot of people say, no, I'm just concerned about immigration. This isn't about the colour of anyone's skin. There are people within it who it is about the colour of their skin. And a lot of people would define it culturally rather than by the colour of skin. I think sometimes that is a gap which is exploited again.
Yeah.
But there's a few people who would happily say, I'm far right, I'm fascist. The rest of people are like, no, I'm a woman, I'm concerned about my safety, and this is something successive governments have ignored for years.
Yeah. Brilliant reporting, as always, Tom. Really appreciate it. And we'll have more from you next hour. I think we're going to look at the groups in Europe and those you spoke to in Germany. Thank you for that. Now, Antonio Guterres will step down as Secretary-General of the UN this year after serving 2 5-year terms. 8 people are looking to take over. One of them is Maria Fernanda Espinosa from Ecuador, who will be the first woman to lead the UN if successful. And I'm very pleased to say Maria Fernanda Espinosa joins us now live. Maria, thank you so much for being with us, and good morning to you from London. Why have you put yourself forward to run the UN?
Thank you, Kamali. Thank you for having me. And I put my name forward because I have more than 30 years of experience working in relation with the UN. I bring a long professional career as a diplomat, as a multilateralist, and I'm fully committed to serving the UN. It's 193 member states, and to address the core, profound challenges that the UN is facing today. So that's why I put my name forward. The UN environment, they know me very well as a results-oriented diplomat, as a person that really knows the house inside out.
Profound challenges is, I think, a very diplomatic way of putting it. Many think that the UN is completely not fit for purpose and perhaps shouldn't even exist.
I think the UN is irreplaceable. It's the only universal platform that brings the whole community of countries and nations together, 193 of them, with the same microphone to speak, with the same button to vote, a place where small and big can bring their views, can bring their aspirations, can bring their challenges, and the interconnectedness. We are radically interconnected in today, so we need a global universal space to deal with the big challenges that we were just watching before. Major displacement, environmental stress, geoeconomic tensions, geopolitical tensions. Even though regions have more importance right now, we need this universal platform. Of course, the UN was created 80 years ago, and it's not fit for purpose anymore. There is a lot of reform, transformation, renewal, a retooling of the UN that is urgently needed, and that's what I'm proposing as a candidate, to reform the UN.
And would those reforms be getting rid of the Security Council? When you talk there, Maria, it's very simple. You're talking about the General Assembly, where everyone does have a voice, but the Security Council, as you well know, has power of veto. And you mentioned some of our reporting. I mean, from the reporting from the occupied West Bank, of course, the UN tell us that it is occupied territory, illegal settlements under international law, but nothing can happen in that area because the US will just veto any moves that are put through the Security Council. Would reforming, getting rid of the Security Council, be on your ticket if you were to be UN Secretary General?
The reform of the Security Council has been going on for the last 20 years. It has many aspects of it. It's not only about the veto. It is about improving the working methods of the Security Council. It is about implementing the decisions that are taken by the Security Council. And believe me, the Security Council works around the clock. Of course, there is...
Maria, sorry to interrupt. I don't have loads of time, but why keep it? You'll know that for a long time, some countries, I mean, I'm going to mention specifically Turkey, have said that the world is bigger than five. There shouldn't be a Security Council. Other people should be either a part of that group, should be larger, or perhaps disbanded entirely. Why would you keep a grouping like that?
The decision to reform the Security Council lies in member states. No, of course, the Security Council has to be more effective, more impact-driven. The Security Council has to improve its working methods, the implementation of the resolutions it adopts. Of course, the process is in the hands of member states. The Secretary General can facilitate, broker, provide a secretariat support of excellence, provide scenarios, provide evidence. But the decision lies in member states when we're speaking about reform. And we have to be very honest and frank. Of course, the Secretary General has a role to play in terms of providing the intelligence, the information, the scenario, and serving, if requested, as a known-as broker to facilitate agreement on the reform process.
But those countries within the Security Council, I'm thinking the US, China, Russia, the UK, will not want to give up their power of veto. I mean, turkeys don't vote for Christmas. So how would you be able, if your member states need to reform it, how would you actually get them to reform it? And this really goes to the heart of this whole problem with the United Nations, doesn't it? The reform is so big, it would be so transforming that it's just never going to happen.
The reform process is a mandated process under the General Assembly. As President of the General Assembly, I led the process myself. I know how difficult it is to give up some of the prerogatives some countries have. But we focus on the P5 and on the veto. But I think the elected 10 members have a very critical role to play in decision making, in the work of the Security Council every day. So I think it's not just let's focus on the veto. The Security Council, for sure, needs to be more representative, more impact-oriented, more effective. There is hard work behind that, and we have to acknowledge the headlines only makes touches on issues such as the Security Council didn't do that, they didn't agree on this and that. But there is a lot of work that is actually done every day by the Security Council, and it doesn't make the news, of course, because you have to focus on the hard topics, on the difficult issues. But the Security Council deals with issues of counterterrorism, in organized crime, and sanctions committees, and peacekeeping operations, and peace building. So it's a body that goes beyond the idea or veto or no veto. And of course, what you need is a Secretary General that is more present, that is really where conflicts are, that operates as an honest broker on the peace and security field. And we don't want to hear again, where is the UN in all of this, in the Secretary General in all of this. I think that a change in leadership in the UN is going to be of favor this process of renewable, of new oxygen into the leadership and decision making of the United Nations.
And the first woman to lead it as well.
Of course, after 80 years, I think it's about time, of course.
Okay. Maria Fernanda Espinosa, all the best. Thank you for joining us. Sorry we had to cut it short because I've got loads more to ask you, but we have run out of time. Maybe we'll speak again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, Prince Harry and several other household names are going to find out how much they will have to pay the publisher of the Daily Mail today. A string of claims against the Associated Newspapers Limited brought by the Duke of Sussex and 6 other household names were dismissed by a High Court judge earlier this year. They had claimed the publisher used unlawful activities to gather information. Associated Newspapers said they didn't. The former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, was briefly moved from prison to hospital overnight. The 73-year-old is in prison on corruption charges that he says are politically motivated. His family and supporters have repeatedly said his health has deteriorated while being incarcerated. 2 activists in Hong Kong who organised annual vigils to remember the Tiananmen Square crackdown in 1989 have been convicted under a controversial national security law. Li Chuk-yan and Chow Hang-tung pleaded not guilty to inciting subversion. Their sentence will be determined at a later date. They face up to 10 years in prison. All right, Jackie's joined us because we've got some sport coming up.
Yes, it is. Big day. Premier League is back. We're going to be talking about the reigning champions, Arsenal, kicking things off this evening against newly promoted Coventry City.
for staying with us. Now, French police say they've prevented nearly 200 small boat crossings under their new deal with the UK. The Home Office says that figures show a 5% increase in the number of crossings stopped by the French since the agreement was signed in April. Our political correspondent Amanda Acas joins us now for a bit more on this. Amanda, probably tell us a little bit about what this deal is and what the French police are actually saying they've done.
Yes, so I think the Home Office are keen to suggest that French police have basically got a lot better at preventing migrants from setting off in these small boats in the first place because they've struck this big deal, £662 million being paid by the UK to the French over the next 3 years to help this, on top of the previous deal struck by the Tories 3 years before, which was nearly 500 million. So it's a huge amount of money being spent. But now they're saying that since this latest deal, there have been big improvements. 185 small boats stopped, more than 4,000 migrants prevented from making that journey. There were 4 weeks over the past 3-month period when they successfully stopped all the attempted crossings. Now, this footage they've released from French border authorities, it's rather extraordinary. So it shows the French authorities effectively intervening directly with this dinghy that's about to make the crossing. And here you can see one of the officers slashing it with a knife to puncture it so it can't make the journey at all. But the migrants who are in the inflatable life jackets, you can see, are actually going for the police, throwing stones at them. So they're under attack. They're responding using pepper spray. So I think they've put this quite dramatic footage out to show that they are being more muscular, because the criticism that's been made again and again of the French authorities is that they just haven't been doing enough.
Not stopping the boats.
Despite all of this money. To be fair, the laws in France were a lot stricter up until last year, effectively. They weren't allowed to do anything when the boat was in the water because it was seen as endangering lives at sea.
It's a safety issue.
Exactly. There was a big negotiation with Yvette Cooper where the French authorities did agree that they would change that law to give the police a bit more leeway so that they could intervene into shallow water to do exactly what they're doing there. The Tories say they haven't been doing that. They haven't been doing it enough. And the Tories say all of this is a bit of a joke, this celebration of the increased figures, because they're actually down by half on the previous 6 months overall. I think for the Home Office, they'd say it's about comparing like with like each time of year. They're saying actually 61% of all small boat crossings have been stopped, which is a 5% increase on the same time last year. As part of the deal, they've got drones, they've got 2 helicopters, they've got another 50 riot police, they've got more cameras, they're also detaining people who are there waiting to make the crossings in France as well. That's all new. The Home Secretary has issued a statement saying our new UK-France deal is already having a real impact, stopping crossings before they happen, disrupting the criminal gangs behind them. People smugglers should be in no doubt. We're taking down their operations, seizing their equipment and breaking their business model for good. Through our joint work with France, we've stopped over 47,000 small boat crossing attempts since the election, and we will not let up. Now, the numbers are down overall, more than 40% for this year to date compared to the same time last year, which the government will clearly be hoping is as a result of their policies, not just this, also their changes to asylum rules. But overall, when you look at the picture across Europe, the numbers are also down by 40%. So there are fewer people coming into Europe as well. So that's clearly playing a big part.
And we had polling as well that shows that people don't actually think the numbers are down. They think the numbers are going up.
Absolutely, and that's really interesting. And that just plays into the hands of the right-wing parties, Reform in particular, also the Tories, who clearly made this a key electoral issue. And so they keep talking up the scale of the numbers. And they don't really want to talk about the fact that they are coming down. But clearly for them, every time we see, for example, we had that massive boat, 230 people in one boat just a couple of weeks ago, that's a new tactic of the people smugglers. So although they're getting fewer through overall, in some of the individual boats, there are greater numbers. And so that's why you're hearing Reform talking about those specific images rather than the overall picture. But, I mean, clearly there are still some 15,000 people who've come through this year, so it's still a problem. They haven't stopped the boats, they haven't smashed the gangs as they promised. But certainly I think the reason we're hearing so much from the Home Office about these numbers lately is because they really want to highlight that they are beginning to come down, and they're hoping that they are getting some value from this money from the French, finally.
Yeah, well, we've heard that. We've heard the statement from the Home Secretary. We're not going to hear from the government this morning. We'll hear from the Conservatives a little bit later on. I'll put some of that to them for you. Amanda, thank you. All right, let's turn to the sports news now. Jackie is still here with us. Hello, Jax.
Good morning. Do you think Amanda's a secret Arsenal fan wearing a red jacket this morning?
Maybe.
There's some excitement about this evening. Her laugh says it all, really.
To get
Yes, I would. I mean,
You're a massive Arsenal fan?
I'm afraid not.
I won't make you talk football if you don't want to, Amanda.
No, Brighton's my club.
Really?
So
Oh,
for
there
my
you go.
years in the South Coast.
Thanks,
So I should be in
Good
blue.
club, good solid club. So new season starts tonight.
Excited.
It's obviously the main sort of bunch of fixtures will be tomorrow. But Arsenal Coventry is an exciting first fixture. You know, the champions against the Championship champions and newly promoted Coventry and Frank Lampard's Coventry. So it's kind of like a lot going on in this fixture. 3 months since this happened, Arsenal lifted the trophy. And in that time, they've had an indifferent pre-season, losing a few games. They have been strong in the transfer market, buying Bruno Guimaraes from Newcastle. Ezri Konsa, we heard on Wednesday, that deal is pretty much done. It's agreed. And yesterday, Mikel Arteta said Miles Lewis-Skelly, who is a player who's come through their academy and been there since he was like a baby, is staying and will 100% be an Arsenal player by the end of the window.
Good for them.
So strong words. And then, of course, you put that with the Community Shield and how well they played and how easily they dispatched Manchester City. It was, you know, they have to say, they're looking confident, and people are talking about back-to-back championships. But that is very hard to do. Hardly anyone ever does it. That's fighting talk, but we'll see. It's a very, very tough first fixture, obviously, for Coventry City, who are coming up. They have spent quite a lot in the transfer market themselves. They want to stay. It's 25 years away for Cov, not in the top flight, and it's been a really tough 25 years where the fans have suffered quite a lot. They've been homeless. They've nearly gone out of business. They were down in the 4th tier of English football. And Frank Lampard has got them back to this position, open-top bus parades, and they're going in there and they're going to give it a right good go. Can they buck the trends? Of the last 9 teams that have come up, 7 have gone straight back down again. Sunderland managed it, so can Coventry manage it? A lot of people think that they can. We heard from Frank Lampard yesterday, but Mikel Arteta, who is now keeping a journal, apparently, is...
just his thoughts?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, writing down his plans for the future. And his plan is he wants to have another good season.
We are very conscious of what it's going to take to deliver that, but I feel the ambition, I feel the desire, and I feel the ability and the conviction around the team that we can do it.
So look, he's journaling and he's got big plans to go back to back. I mean, Forest stayed up as well, remember?
Yeah, but it's quite a...
It's hard.
It's quite a hard
It's very
thing
hard to do.
Also, just quickly about this story. Did you hear about the story about Hegebo, the West Brom player,
I did not,
who has been handed a 2-match suspension for this? So have a look at this goal. On the face of it, you just think, wow, it's a goal.
Just comes off him.
Yeah, but
Chest,
it came
head.
off his hand.
What?
So he's been charged with successfully deceiving a match official by handling the ball. The ref didn't see it, the linesman didn't see it at the time, but retrospectively, he has been handed a suspension because there is no VAR in the Championship. I'm not sure what I think about that. That's a bit of a funny area to go into, isn't it?
It happened during the World Cup where they were going back, pulling things back. It really upset me.
It's a new thing.
It upset England more.
One other little bit of football news as well. That Spurs just agreed a deal for Savinho from Manchester City for 75 million, and that has happened this morning. Now, tennis. Last night, great news for tennis fans. Carlos Alcaraz has been out with a wrist injury and growing his hair for the last 5 months. Is going to be back at the US Open at the end of the month, which is, he's a reigning champion. And he just brings a bit of pizzazz and fun, I think, to the court. And obviously that, the meetings with Sinner have been amazing, haven't they? And it is quite boring if you just allow Sinner to run away. It's good to have Carlos back. So he is back for the US Open, which will have the biggest prize fund ever. 4.3 million to the winners.
Not too bad.
And 102,667 to the first round losers.
So if you just get into the first round, you lose, you get that
Get through qualifying.
in the bank. Lovely.
Yeah. Also, yesterday afternoon was Max Verstappen signing a new deal. Talking about money, Verstappen. Are you Dutch now?
No.
70 million a year. He signed his contract extension to 2030. I like this story because I liked how they did it. Have a quick look at this video that they put out. This is Red Bull Racing to show that he'd re-signed.
It can't be right. It really can't be right. Max, does it look right to you?
No, there's meant to be a hyphen in there.
Ah, yeah, of course, yeah.
Funny guys in the F1, aren't they?
It's quite good acting.
Not too bad.
You need a hyphen in there. Cricket is, I don't know if you've done the weather yet. I don't know what the weather's like.
Not yet.
In Headingley. It was really bad yesterday. And they didn't start playing till 2:45. So the whole morning. Yeah, because of the rain. And that's just so ironic, isn't it? The whole summer has been blazing and dry and perfect cricket weather. And then all of a sudden, you know, interrupting the Test match. Anyway, day 3 today against Pakistan. England very much in control. They had a good day with the bat yesterday. It's Joe Root Mark II as captain, and it was good. It was really good. 366 for 8, a lead of 195. This is Joe Root getting out. No, not getting out.
That's 4 runs, isn't it? Yeah. There he is.
And
that's his 50.
He was playing his 66th Test match as captain, wearing his jumper, which has got 66 on the back, and he made 66.
He didn't.
That is very
loads of sixes.
Spooky. Harry Brook had a very good day. I think he probably will be kicking himself and would have loved a century on his home ground.
Right?
Yeah, 91 off 93 balls, which is a very good knock.
Smashing it around.
Smashed it around. So it wasn't Bazball. It was a sort of hybrid, sensible playing. Pakistan were a little bit toothless. They could have done more in the cloudy conditions, and they did not. We can also, obviously that's going to happen today. Yeah. Also happening later on Sky is Rory McIlroy, who last week had a very bad week, finished 66th at the St Jude Championship, had a very, very bad weekend. He went back out, did a bit of training with his coaches, put it all back together, and he is top of the leaderboard at the BMW Championship.
Excellent.
And playing very well. Look at that lovely scorecard.
That's very nice, isn't it?
It's very
Doing
nice.
very well. Good old Rory. Well, it's good to see him playing well, as always. Jackie, is that it?
Yeah, we're done.
All right, fine.
Till next hour.
Do it again
See you
next hour. Nice one. Thank you for that. OK, let's take a look at the weather and potentially what's happening up at Headingley.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
We are in for a cooler spell with heavy showers, but the weekend is going to be mostly fine. Expect some good sunshine this morning, but there will still be a bit of rain around. It's going to be scattered more than it was yesterday, with Northern Ireland, North East England, Wales and the West Country seeing the most. Heavy showers will bring the risk of hail and thunder, especially in the southwest. It's going to be cool, as I said, with temperatures a little below average for many, and there is some rain in the forecast for Headingley. Not sure whether it will affect play later.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
All right, we'll stay with us here on Mornings, because coming next, we're going to look at the morning newspapers. Benedict Spence will be right here.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok.
The only way they'll allow elections is if I'm inside jail or killed.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Free, wherever you get your news.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Seagal?
I'm Conor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent. Sky News, the full story first.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky Security and Defence Editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
I bet right now
you often find yourself asking why. Why was a certain decision taken? Why did something happen? Why did they say or do that? I'm Neil Patterson, and it's my job as a journalist to find out why. Just explain why.
It's a difficult one.
Well, I mean, it's massive.
It's a very, very severe situation.
So if you want to make sense of this complicated world, Sky News' new podcast, This Is Why, is your daily fix. One story every day, and we can find out why together. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
The trauma for everyone who witnessed what happened here hasn't gone away.
Devastation.
Greg Milam, Sky News, Manchester.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
All right, well, Benedict has joined us yet again. Last time for you this morning, Benedict. Had a good time. Got loads here. Let's rattle through as many as we can. We're going to start with GCSEs. As I said earlier this morning, always gives me a slight shudder thinking about my GCSE results. Records are sealed, if anyone's wondering. What's the news here?
I was going to say, my subconscious has lost those memories. That's probably because mine possibly were even worse. But there's good news at the GCSE sphere today, and that is that boys are closing the gap to girls. Do you hear that, chaps? Great news. Well done. But the bad news is that's because actually girls aren't doing quite as well. Oh. It's not because we're getting any better.
They're just not us.
And this is supposedly, at least in part, this is being blamed on worse mental health levels amongst children in that age, but also social media use, which has supposedly leads to more procrastination, shorter attention spans. So, you know, that's... It's always a positive in some ways, I suppose, to see that there's not too much differentiation. But when we're thinking about what particularly this generation of children has actually gone through, because, of course, this was the generation that was locked down in those sort of crucial COVID years, I think that was something that was always predicted, that actually results wouldn't necessarily be as good. And even back then, people were saying screen time, social media would have an impact. And presumably that's at least in part why girls aren't doing quite as well. But, you know, they are still in the lead for now.
Absolutely. And just on that double-page spread as well, Catherine Birbal-Singh, who's described as the strictest head in the country, Michaela Community School up in North London, they've done really well. Their results rival Eton's.
Yeah, they have... it's very well known, actually, that they do particularly well. Methods aren't necessarily liked by everybody, but you can't actually argue with the end results. But this is also, actually, this is discussed in another story, which is, I think, in the Telegraph, which is reflected in, of course, the performance of free schools as opposed to both private and standard state school education, which is that free schools generally aren't doing phenomenally well. Right. I mean, there's about 600 or so, and they do tend to sort of cluster further up the league tables of results. But what this is discussing actually in the Telegraph is the move away, or at least the hint that there will be a move away from that sort of very aggressive learning patterns towards sort of accruing as much knowledge as possible. You know, we hear this all the time, actually, that with the onset of the internet and AI and all these sorts of things, you don't need as much of the sort of the raw information because you can just look stuff up. Actually, what you need are sort of critical thinking skills. Yeah. But the point that's being made here, and I think this is Nick Gibb who's saying this, which is that actually in order to have sort of fully functional critical thinking skills, you need to be able to draw on the information in the first place. And, you know, things like Lucy Powell, the current education secretary, coming in and saying actually too much pressure is placed, too much emphasis is placed on, you know, learning books and texts and that sort of thing to be useful. I personally think it's a very short-sighted view, because actually I think you should be giving children as many options as possible, and you shouldn't actually be favouring one route or another, because, of course, we touched upon earlier, there was another story about a larger number of people doing GCSE resits not passing. Not every approach works for every child. Yeah. So actually to say, well, we don't need to focus on one area, well, that might be great for Lucy Powell, but actually there might be a lot of children who really benefit from that approach to learning.
Another thing that goes into Andy Burnham's file of things to deal with once he gets underway in September.
That's why he's got a whole nother number 10 in the north, because there are so many files and they're getting so large.
The cabinet is huge. Right, let's move on to this in the Telegraph. This is fascinating. Take us through the reporting here. US stealth operation to take oil from Hormuz.
Yeah, so this has been going on since May and has been kept very quietly under the radar. Approximately 10 million barrels of oil per day, or rather per night, is being shifted through the Straits of Hormuz, hugging the Omani coast, and it's being protected by the US Navy. And it's all being coordinated actually from the US as well. And this is, it's a real game of cat and mouse. Transponders obviously on ships being turned off as part of a bid. And even with this amount, it's a lot of oil that's being taken out here, but it's still less than half roughly of what was coming out beforehand. But it's a fascinating thing because actually it's managed to obviously keep or help keep global oil prices sort of vaguely steady. That plus the Chinese deciding to tap into their strategic reserves rather than sort of shop in the foreground like they usually did. But this has come in tandem, of course, with the US trying to put the blockade on Iranian ports, and it came in response to the Iranians saying, well, we're going to close the Strait of Hormuz. So this is, if you like, a rather muscular approach to trying to break that stoppage of the strait. And it does appear to have been working up to now. Not too many of these ships have been hit, because actually, as much as we talk about the US's relative failure to stop Iranian attacks, they are still shooting blind a lot of the time. And of course, if it's the Omani coast rather than, you know, the actual strait itself, that little bit of distance, it's harder to actually hit those ships in the first place.
And it might seem as if some strategy to finally come into all of this, or they've worked out how much they can actually safely guide through, and then they're going to work with that as a base point and then try and build that out. Now that the reporting's out there, I wonder what the Iranians will do. That will be shown in the fullness of time. Let's move on to this on the front of the FT. It's about leasehold flats failing to sell. Take us through this report.
Oh, it's dreadful news to everybody who ever bought a leasehold flat and then decided maybe they don't want to live in the leasehold flat anymore, and then the market turns around and goes, well, that sucks because you're stuck with it. 9 in 10 not selling. Wow. This, of course, comes in tandem with the fluctuating house prices, especially in the capital, where nobody really seems to know what the price point of a lot of properties is. Rents are very high because the demand is still there, but obviously the ability to shift a flat is increasingly difficult, and the leasehold aspect to this, I think, is what is making it so difficult. Fees are going up, ground rents are going up, maintenance of a lot of these properties, actually often they aren't particularly good quality relatively, is also very high as well. It's a tricky one, actually, because it's something that Labour talked a lot about before we came into office, the need to abolish leasehold. How's that going? One never hears about it anymore, but there are an awful lot of owners in London and other parts of the country who would like something to be done about it.
You know where that is? That's in that file. That's what it's about.
God, imagine what else is in that file. It's a giant black hole of things that we've memory hold.
Let's move on to this one, actually, in the Mail about bowel cancer screening, because this is fascinating and it just points out again the importance of people getting screened for these things, because it can really save lives.
It does, and, you know, reducing the risk by 43%, which is what the headline says. I mean, that's staggering in itself, but you dive down into the copy, and, you know, you're seeing actually that screening is having to come down in age, because actually bowel cancer diagnosis of people of around age 50 is at 50% higher than it was a couple of decades ago. So whilst, yes, you can look at this and say, we're making great progress in being able to screen these things, in this particular home test that I think it's called the Guaic-based fecal occult blood test, which tests the stool for signs of it very early on. Fantastic. You're able to nip in the bud when it's very early. So actually the treatment is a lot less invasive, as it can often become incredibly painful in later life. It is a necessity, actually, to get out ahead of these things, because more and more people are being diagnosed with it. So on the one hand, these are increasingly common now, these good news stories about progress that's being made in the medical field. On the other hand, lifestyle, environmental factors, whatever it is, sadly are making these things a lot more necessary.
They are indeed. Let's move on to this one. 2 stories we can get through, Benedict. It's actually kind of, I'm going to meld the two. So it's the bottom of the Times I want to talk about, the hosepipe ban being in place until the end of the year. My garden is suffering. And also the eye reporting on drought.
Yep, and that's... So, We are potentially, well, everybody is aware we've had a very difficult, very hot, very dry summer, but that is potentially not going to be on the cards for much longer. However, it's not going to be enough to replenish water levels, so there will still be a hosepipe ban in place potentially till the end of the year, which I'm sure everybody is absolutely delighted by, although it is classic, of course. Thames Water announces the hosepipe ban, and almost about a week or two later, the skies get greyer, and it starts to threaten that it might rain. But that's all got to be factored into the fact that, you know, we've also got concerns over things like what actually the rain, when it does come, is going to do. The ground is very hard. That's going to mean possibly flash floods, which means that the water doesn't accumulate in the reservoirs or the rivers. It just washes straight away, and it causes a lot of damage. Isn't it wonderful? Weather, what a great thing.
And we could talk about it all day. But the last thing we're going to talk about is this picture that we're going to show you. It's, oh no, what do they do to the bush pepper thing?
The dreadful thing about this is a bush that's actually survived the drought.
Yep,
It has all of its leaves. It was doing really well. It's still green, and somebody's looked at it and gone, well, I don't think you should get away with this. If my garden's going to suffer, you're going to suffer as well. But yeah, obviously that's a rather sad thing to see, isn't it?
Headline funny, you swines. Benedict, pleasure, mate. Good morning to you. Thanks so much. Headlines next.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Hello there, a very good morning to you. It is 9 a.m. and this is Mornings with me, Kamali, Melbourne. Here are your headlines. After an historically hot and dry summer, Britain braces for El Nino, with a start warning coming from the Met Office. We report from Israel on the West Bank settlement economy as calls grow in Britain for a complete embargo of goods coming from occupied Palestinian land. We hear from women in Britain and Europe who are vehemently anti-immigration and examine the influence they have in shaping opinion. Now, Prince Harry and several other famous faces will today find out how much they have to pay in legal costs after losing their High Court battle with the publisher of the Daily Mail. Thanks for staying with us. Now, El Niño is a term that we're going to be hearing a lot of in the next few weeks and months. It is a weather pattern that happens every 2 to 7 years, and it lasts for about 12 months. Now, for Britain, that means a wet autumn and a very cold winter. And today, the Met Office warned this one could be the strongest in living memory. Well, Professor Stephen Belcher from the Met Office said, this summer we've experienced heat waves across Europe, reminding us of the effects of climate change. This large El Niño is a reminder that natural variations in the climate system are also at play, adding to the stresses of climate change. Well, let's bring in our meteorologist, Joe Wheeler, for some more on all of this. Joe, good morning again to you. Let's just start then, I guess, with what El Niño actually is.
Well, it's fairly complex, but if you imagine it initially as a warm bath, yeah, where the warm water is sloshing from one end to the other, and that's in essence what it is, that there is increasingly warm water in certain parts of the world, which changes the weather systems. So it's naturally happening. It's when unusually warm water develops across the Pacific. That enormous area of warm water then rises, and that allows heat and moisture to be released into the atmosphere. And that alters atmospheric pressure and also the jet stream. And because the jet stream steers where our weather goes, and indeed across the world, that's why it has impacts thousands and thousands of miles away. Now, they declare an El Niño when temperatures rise 0.5 degrees Celsius above the long-term average. This time we're looking at 3 degrees. And this is why people are getting excited about it. Much like the rest of the summer, records are being set, and a 3-degree rise above the national average, would be quite extreme. Now, if that happens, the impact on Britain is likely to be a fairly mild and wet autumn and a colder end to winter. But obviously we don't know that until we get there.
And how else is it going to impact us as well? Because as you say, we don't know until we get there. Have we seen the start of it with that rain that we had yesterday and the rain forecast now?
I'm not entirely sure about that, to be perfectly honest. I mean, summer has to end. They always said about summer in Britain that it's 3 fine days and a thunderstorm. And it, you know, we've had these persistent heat waves. And I would again take issue about exactly how those are measured, because now we call a heat wave, you know, a day, well, 3 consecutive days when temperatures reach a certain number of degrees above average for that part of the world. So in fact, through this summer, we've had areas going into and out of heat wave, you know, incessantly. But we have had 5 periods of very, very, you know, high temperatures. So technically we're in the 5th heat wave. There have been warnings about a 6th, but I don't really see too much of that on the horizon. And finally, the weather has broken down with a cold front bringing much cooler conditions and a northerly breeze to us, which is what we've got at the moment. High pressure returns at the weekend, but it won't be the high temperatures and you know, sunbathing gear once again. That's not going to be the case. It'll be nice, yeah, but it won't be that warm. And so meteorological autumn actually begins on the 1st of September. We haven't got there yet, but it does look as though the weather's going to be more unsettled before we get there. Now, the more unsettled the weather gets, the harder it is to forecast, because it's moving fast. It could change direction. And so we are looking at an unsettled week next week. And then it looks like, you know, there could be a couple of spectacular areas of low pressure, which will bring not just some rain, but some strong winds. The rain, never enough. Now, it has to be said that last winter, we saw something like 150 millimetres of excess rainfall, which is about what we're deficit through the summer. So many people will be feeling that the hosepipe bans and the extension of the hosepipe bans is actually really, really unfair. But no, because the ground is so dry, it needs some fairly consistent rain, boring rain, if you like, to actually make it right. A big downfall, torrential downpour is not going to help because it will just run off and it'll cause flash flooding. And then again, you see, you're also looking at dramatic weather conditions when you get a massive fall of rain and then everywhere's flooded, and everyone will get quite upset about that. So the El Nino effect, it doesn't usually have a massive impact on the UK, but it may well do this year. Because it's an unprecedented one, because temperatures are so high above base value, it could be that we do see some fallout from that.
Joe, you use the word unprecedented. Do we know why this particular one, is going to be quite so bad? I mean, you've talked about the temperatures, but why are those temperatures so high in the sea?
Well, we've already seen, those record high temperatures through the year, and that's just here. Yeah, you need to look elsewhere globally at exactly what's happened with the temperatures. But I do think, we have seen all those records broken this summer. It's hardly surprising. Now, the Met Office are hinting that 2027 may be one of the hottest years on record, maybe 2024 into a cocked hat. And that may well happen. But we genuinely won't know until we get here. El Nino is a natural occurring phenomenon. And its history actually is amazing because way back when, Peruvian fishermen started to notice that around Christmas, they often had warm waters. So the cold, nutrient-rich waters that they were used to fishing in changed. And suddenly, the fish weren't there. Specifically anchovies for them, because that was what they were most interested in. And this started to be looked at by various other scientists. A guy called Victor Eguiguren in the 1890s, and later Sir Gilbert Walker, an English mathematician and meteorologist. He started looking at why certain parts of the country had drought whilst others had torrential rain. And then, in fact, all the pieces of the jigsaws were put together by a guy called Jacob Cairns. Sorry if I've said that wrong. Norwegian-American scientist. And he was the one who coined the idea of southern oscillation. And so we now have this El Nino southern oscillation, which we know when it occurs has impacts on various parts of the world. Now, like any of these ripple effect things, maybe they don't extend too far, but this time, with a rise of 3 degrees above base average, there is a greater potential for that to impact Britain, first of all, in terms of its weather this autumn and winter, and secondly, its temperature through 2027.
Love it. Joe, come for the weather, stay for the history lesson. Really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Speak again soon. Now, the UK considers Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank illegal, but that's not stopped their produce making its way onto our supermarket shelves. Palestinian farmers say their land and water is being taken by Israeli settlers, and that they're struggling to compete with settlements which have a far greater access to international markets. Now, the government is under growing pressure to introduce an outright trade ban on stuff coming from those occupied territories, as our international correspondent Diana Magnay now reports.
We've seen terrible scenes recently of Israeli settlers laying siege to Palestinian homes in the West Bank and a huge surge in settler violence. It's caused international outcry, but there's been no change in policy towards Israel and certainly no change to the violence on the ground. One of the topics that's being hotly discussed in Westminster and Whitehall, also in the EU, is whether to ban all trade with settlements which are considered by the UK illegal under international law.
Spain has banned imports from settlements in the West Bank. Britain has more responsibility here than Spain. Unlike Britain, Spain was never a colonial power here.
Abdul Karim Fouka has seen a lot in his 73 years. Israel's seizure of the West Bank in 1967 and the huge expansion of settlements since then through his family's farmland. And he has little hope of change.
At my age, I can see that our situation is not good at all. Not good at all. The young people will either go to prison or be killed. That is the future we are talking about.
In the lush Jordan Valley, you can see the promise of this land. Date plantations ripe for harvest. This is rich agricultural soil. Area C, the economic heart of the settlement enterprise. Land and water fiercely contested, but for Palestinians, a losing battle.
Yeah, over there, the last structure in the top, that's the settlers' outpost.
Rashid Kouderi's village of Berdala is hemmed in by Israeli outposts, one on every hilltop.
Many times they're going, the settlers, during the night and destroying our water pipeline, the water tubes.
Yeah.
And when we go in the morning to water our plant, our stuff, it's broken.
He has plenty of videos like this of armed Israeli settlers goading Palestinian farmers, spilling their precious water right in front of them. The logic is simple. Control the water and you control the people, their ability to farm and to survive. In the nearby settlement of Mehola, vibrant citrus groves. Water's not a problem here. Mehola was the first agricultural settlement that Israel set up after 1967. And we understand that some of the produce from here does go to the EU. We don't know if it goes to the UK. And that is from eyewitnesses who say that they were told that particular areas had to have a particular fertilizer or agrochemical on it because it was for export to the European Union.
A lot of that produce, it's grown on stolen land.
After a 4-year investigation, the legal group Global Echo believes that 1 in 6 shipments into the EU contains settlement products, disguised as Israeli goods. The stats for the UK aren't clear, but the only penalty for settlement imports is that they pay a standard tariff. In a written statement, the government told Sky News, "We have given clear advice to UK businesses that they should not engage in economic activity in illegal settlements and warn them of the reputational and potentially legal consequences of any such activities." But the sense from Palestinians on the ground is that they could do more.
They control at least 80% of our land in the Jordan Valley, and they build the settlers' agro-business, and they export it outside to the UK and to Europe. That's why it's very important to stop the whole settlers' products that's going to the UK. This is just a small thing they can do with the UK governorate, and this is what we ask, of course.
Just beyond Mehola, a natural spring reserved for Israeli use. This ancient land is precious to both peoples, its natural resources available to one more than the other. Diana Magnay, Sky News, in the occupied West Bank.
Well, earlier this morning I spoke to the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Dame Emily Thornberry, who's asking the government to do more.
The United Nations has a list of businesses that are investing illegally in Palestinian land so that they can be exploited by Israeli settlers. So we need to make sure that we stop those goods, because we've recognized Palestine, but that is not enough by itself. It's only the first step. We have to make sure that we get a Palestinian state. And the reaction of the Israeli government has been to try to extinguish the Palestinian state by building these settlements.
Have you spoken to the new Prime Minister about it?
Yeah, I've spoken to the new Prime Minister about it. I'm not repeating private conversations. I've spoken to the new Foreign Secretary about it. I've spoken to the old Foreign Secretary about it. I've spoken to the old Middle East Minister about it. I spoke to the old Prime Minister about it. We have been talking to them about it. We have been bringing them before Parliament on a regular basis. They must take action.
Dame Emily Thornberry speaking to me a little earlier. Now, hard right movements are, of course, nothing new, but in Britain, they are growing, and an increasing number of women have begun getting involved. Concerns over immigration and women's safety dominate debates both here in the UK and in Europe, and some of the ideas being shared by some within these groups can be extreme. Let's bring in our data and forensics correspondent, Tom Cheshire, who is leading the reporting on all of this. Tom, brilliant reporting from you and team, as always. Take us inside this movement that you've discovered.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it starts with the concerns shared by lots of people in this country around women's safety and immigration. You saw that yesterday with the understandable uproar over the pamphlet that was handed out to asylum seekers around the spelling out the laws around rape and consent in the UK. So a lot of that is an organic thing that has come up naturally. Some of these groups are formed in response to sexual assaults by asylum seekers in hotels. But it also goes a lot broader than that. That's what we found out over the course of this summer following these groups here in the UK and also in Europe. Now, social media is really, really important to it as well. It presents a bit of a softer image too. And every country sort of has its own spin on it, but they all collaborate across borders. One of the groups we went to speak to is called Lucreta. They've been going for a while now. They're in Germany. I met up with them in Cologne. We met in Cologne, the site of a notorious mass sexual assault by immigrants during New Year's festivities in 2015.
So I'm the founder of Lucreta. So I started this group in May 2019, so over 7 years ago. And but we became very public last 1.5 years, I guess.
A lot of people frame us as the devil and just think that we're untouchables as soon as we speak our opinion. And so they just break all the bonds, even people who are like that close before.
Lucreta is classed as an extremist organisation in Germany. Like Lucy White, their key message is remigration. Their position is actually softer. They would apply it to illegal migrants and those who've committed crimes, rather than anyone without German ancestry. They say their message of women's safety is driving membership.
We have goth girls, we have like more cutesy girls who are very modern, but we also have like girls who like traditional stuff. We have Christian girls who dress more modest. We have like the sexy girls who want to show more cleavage.
And they collaborate across borders with other like-minded women's groups. How important are those connections, that network with other women's groups abroad?
Yeah, they're important. Of course, we want to, because it's not like a phenomenon we have only in Germany. We also have it in the UK, with especially now when the Rotherham reports came out, but also in France you have also the same situation, in Italy and in Spain. And of course, it's important to connect because we are not racist. We want to meet other women who share our opinions.
And Tom, I guess fascinating seeing how it's manifesting in Germany. It's not just in Germany, of course, it's across Europe as well because of the issues that people see.
Yeah, there's a big group in France called Collective Nemesis, groups in Sweden. Obviously here in the UK, a group called Pink Ladies, which started in Epping as a result of that. It's really broad in terms of the opinion. So, speaking to Lucreta, then classed as an extremist organisation over there, that's probably because of Germany's unique situation. So their position would be they want to deport illegal immigrants and immigrants who have committed crimes, which is, pretty much where I think Reform or the Conservatives are here. But they're classed as extremists because of Germany's unique history, their links to the AfD. Other people we spoke to went a lot further. So, lots of differences of opinion. There's a big emphasis on free speech, free thinking within these movements is not policed. But others will go further and say people who haven't been in the UK, who weren't in the UK before 1948, they should be deported. Wow. That's a term known as remigration. And so that's obviously going beyond the sort of safety aspects to a more demographic. Other people who said that, Jews don't belong in the UK. So really extreme views, but all gathered under it. And I think that's the thing. There are ample sort of reasons to be concerned. People want to protest for that. They may just see these groups and get involved, but there are others within the movement who want to take things in a more extreme way.
All right, Tom, appreciate it as always. And scan that QR code that you see on screen right now so you can watch Just Gone, but you can find it on our website as well, Tom's full report. Thank you, Tom. Now, French police say they prevented nearly 200 small boat crossings under their new migrant deal with the UK. We'll have that and more of the day's news next.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Now, French police say they prevented nearly 200 small boat crossings under the deal with the UK. The Home Office says that figures show a 5% increase in the number of stoppings being stopped by French police since the agreement was signed in April. Let's bring in our political correspondent, Amanda Acas. Amanda, morning again to you. So is there another new deal? Is it the same deal? What's happening here and how's it working?
Yes, it's effectively a new deal, but it's also a kind of renewal of the previous deals. Right. So the Tory government had a deal back in 2023 that lasted for 3 years that was just over £440 million. Basically paying the French authorities to do more to tackle the small boats. And then in April, a new deal was struck by Shabana Mahmood for another 3 years, and this one is £662 million, although there is a clause within it which basically says if they're not delivering on certain targets, they'll withhold £100 million of that. So under this deal, there are 50 new riot police, there are many more drones, two extra helicopters, more cameras being used. And so the Home Office have released these stats really to try and show, look, it is working. We are getting some return on our investment effectively. And the stats they put out show 185 small boats and more than 4,000 migrants have effectively been prevented from embarking on that crossing as a result of work by the French police. Mm-hmm. They've also put out this footage from the French border authorities, which is pretty dramatic, which shows an officer actually going towards this inflatable dinghy and slashing it with a knife. Now, the officers are actually being attacked by the migrants. You can see in life jackets there. They're throwing stones at them, and the French police are responding by spraying pepper spray. Here we go. This is the officer slashing the boat with the knife. So this is really an attempt to demonstrate that the French police are being more muscular, that they are getting involved. They're going into the water and physically preventing these boats from setting sail. Because that's been the big criticism over so many years, that they just have been standing by effectively and watching as the people smugglers set off from the coast of France to go towards the UK. Now, partly that's because French law is quite specific on this, or it used to be. They weren't allowed to intervene once a boat was in the water because it was seen as endangering lives at sea. Right. They have, as of last year, changed those rules somewhat. So they are enabled now to do a bit more. Now, the Tories say the whole thing is a joke, that the number of boats being stopped has reduced by half over the past year since the year before that. Overall, though, of course, the numbers have gone down a lot this past year. They're down by 40%, which is something reflected across Europe, but it is quite significant. But the government clearly want to try and demonstrate that it's their efforts that are paying a role in this. Right,
Amanda, appreciate that. For now, let's bring in the Conservatives. So we can speak now to Matt Vickers, Deputy Chair of the party and Shadow Minister for Illegal Immigration, Crime, Policing and Fire. Matt Vickers, always good to speak with you. Good morning to you. So look, the numbers are going down.
Kamali, I'm very disappointed in you.
Oh,
you
don't
look
say that,
talking, you're gobbling up government garbage.
You always say that, Matt. The numbers are going down. They're 40% down.
You're picking the stat that the government chooses to give you. The facts are in the year to August 25, 30,012 crossings were prevented by the French. In the year to August 26, last month, 14,462 were stopped. That's 52% down. That is an absolute disaster. They've took £500 million from us, and the numbers of interventions have stopped by half. That is appalling. And you've got some rubbish
No, you always do that. You did that to my colleague Anna recently, and you're doing it to me now. I won't have it. Listen, Home Office stats show that the small boat crossings are at their lowest point since 2021. Are you going to dispute that statistic as well?
Home Office stats tell you that the crossing preventions by French authorities have halved.
No.
Also
just crossings, just boats coming over. Crossings are down, Matt.
The number of crossings under Keir Starmer was the highest of any Prime Minister ever. Andy Burnham's been in office a month and 3,500 people have broken into this country. 7%, only 7% of all those people breaking in have been removed. 7,042 Eritreans arrived in this country illegally by a small boat. How many do you think went back? How many do you reckon?
Are we going to do the stat I just gave you? So we're at the lowest level right now since 2021. You're disputing that?
We are nowhere near low enough. Thousands of
people...
Okay,
but you're not low enough, but you're not disputing that we are at the lowest level now than when the Conservatives were in power.
It goes up, it goes down. But
Matt, you can't just pick and choose the ones you want to use, can you? You've got to... I've given you a statistic there telling you that we are at the lowest level since 2021 under the Conservative government. This government have brought the numbers down, and you want to say that that's not the case, but it is the case, isn't it?
There are all sorts of reasons the numbers may go up a little bit, they may go down a little bit. The reality is that having record levels under the last Prime Minister is not acceptable. 7,042 Eritreans arrived, only 2 have been returned. 4,490 Afghanistanis arrived in the country illegally in a small boat, broke into the country. How many have gone back? 1. That is not an acceptable situation. We need to get to the point where people know that if they come to this country illegally, they will be detained and they will be deported. We cannot... I go out talking to people in my constituency, young people who are struggling to get on the housing ladder. I speak to elderly people who are struggling to get the service they need from social services, from the NHS, because of the pressure placed on our public services. I speak to businesses that are going to the wall because taxes are through the roof. Paying for this sort of thing is not acceptable. It has real consequences. We need to do more. We need to leave the ECHR. We need to detain and deport anybody who arrives in the country illegally.
Yeah, Matt, look, I don't like getting in fights here, but we'll just go back to that one stat that I did bring you, that we're at the lowest level since 2021, because we've done polling that says that people think that crossings are actually going up. So when you are having those conversations with your constituents, you are telling them that the numbers are actually coming down, aren't you?
They're telling me what it's costing them. They're telling me about the damage that's being done. They're telling me about the people who are arriving in this country without any sort of control over those borders. The reality is the weather does a better job of stopping these things than anything else. You tell me how many people have been convicted of being in those small gangs. Remember, there was an offence created of the people who are enabling this stuff. We aren't seeing the activity we need to see. I will tell you, previous governments got this wrong, failed to get a grip on it. They started bringing forward legislation. The one thing that I think gives people hope this week is the fact that after cancelling the Rwanda deal, after saying the idea of detaining and deporting people who arrive in the country illegally was not the way forwards, Shabana Mahmood seems to be looking at that again. I hope she'll continue to look at that. We've got proposals we can put forward. We need to be fair to the British taxpayer who is picking up the tab for all of this and seeing this horrendous situation. The answer is not dishing out pamphlets to tell people not to break the law.
Yeah. Matt, it's not going to be a Rwanda-type deal, though, is it? Is it going to be with another country? Is that the plan that the government have in mind?
It doesn't matter what country. The reality is that people should be returned to their own country or the place from which they departed, or they should be sent to a third country. There are countries where we can't send people home because of what's going on in that country. Well, those people should go to a safe third country so that no matter what, you break in, you're not getting to stay. Once we do that, the people smuggling gangs will not have a viable model. People will stop crossing that channel, taking that risk and putting so much pressure on our public services and public finances.
Matt, the reason you're being so muscular on this, isn't it the case because Reform have kind of got ahead of you guys on all of this migration debate? You're shaking your head, but you haven't come to my question yet.
I'm shaking my head. The reason I'm passionate about this, the reason I think that the government needs to leave the ECHR, detain and deport those people, is because I'm in my constituency now. I'm going to go knock on doors. I'm going to speak to people who are struggling to pay horrendous levels of tax, who are seeing the challenge to their public services. That's why I'm passionate about this. Yeah. That's why I'm bothered. And that's why I know it's the right thing to do by the British taxpayer.
When you're knocking on those doors, will your constituents be telling you that they'd like to see a deal, a pact between you and the Reform Party going forward?
No, they'll be saying that they'd like a government that's fair, is on the side of people who work hard, wants to get public finances under control.
So no deal.
Wants to ensure that less money is given away in benefits, and lets businesses, people who work hard to create jobs, get on with life. They're worried about the million young people not in education, employment and training. They're worried about the fact that unemployment's gone up 19% under this government. That's what they're telling me about. That's what's concerning them every day. That's what I'm getting on with, and we'll have a solution and a plan ready when that next election comes.
And when you do, we'll have you on again. Matt, always good to speak with you, and good morning to you. Matt Vickers there. All right, Jackie's joined us for the sport. You're not going to shout at me about government press releases, are you?
Absolutely not, but it is Premier League Friday, so everybody's in a good mood. Well, I am.
Apart from him.
Apart from him. Reigning champions Arsenal kicking off the Premier League season with newly promoted Coventry City later on. We'll be talking about that and more.
Well, Jackie stayed with us because, as she said just before the break, Premier League gets underway tonight.
Premier League Friday, new Premier League season. I think it's really exciting to look forward to because I think there's so many unknowns in this season. There are so many new managers. You know, there's no Pep Guardiola at Manchester City. What a difference, if any, is that going to make to them? You've got Areola in charge. You know, he's not a new face, but he's new to Liverpool. So how's he going to get on, having gone from, small kind of family-orientated club to, you know, a giant of world football.
Oliver Glasner at Forest.
Oliver Glasner at Forest. That's a similar swap, though. But it just, there's just so many things that you don't know what's going to happen. No. I mean, in that regard, I think Arsenal can feel sort of quite confident in beginning the defence of their title because they're very much unchanged, and all they've done, it really is add to their squad, and they've added, you know, not loads, but they've added, you know, really strong players like Bruno Guimaraes. We understand that, you know, Ezri Konsa, that deal is agreed with Aston Villa. Poor Aston Villa, by the way. I mean, absolutely raided in this transfer window. But it is hard to believe that those pictures of lifting the trophy were just 3 months ago. So they go. So much has happened. Just a small World Cup. So they go in with a lot of confidence, especially after that Community Shield performance against Man City, where they absolutely battered them. Against Coventry tonight, I mean, what a daunting task for the Championship champions, newly promoted under Frank Lampard. Yes, they're going to enjoy the ride, but they don't want to get relegated. And this is, you know, a very sort of, it's a baptism of fire, really, to go in against Arsenal. But I think he'll love it.
It'd be good fun.
Yeah, the fans will love it. Frank Lampard has already said, we're going to go in there and play without fear. I've told my players, you know, yes, respect shown for what all of Arsenal have done and all those other big teams, but we're going to go in and play our way without fear and see where that lands us.
They can play.
They can play. They really can play. It is difficult to stick in the Premier League when you come up. Of the last 9, 7 have gone straight back down. But Sunderland did it last year and did it in real style and ended up in Europe. So, you know, Forest have done it before and now totally established in the Premier League.
That's the kiss of death, maybe.
And Coventry have spent money. 130 million is a fairly big spend. But the fact that they were, you know, a few years ago, homeless, you know, almost in liquidation, you know, tier 4 of English football.
Extraordinary, the journey they've been on.
It's an amazing journey for those fans over 25 years. I still remember the day, because I was reporting on it, the day they went down.
Oh, no.
And to see them back is great. It's great for Coventry fans. But the whole of this Premier League season is going to be quite intriguing, just to see how all the new faces, you know, handle it, really.
Yeah,
we should mention as well, Spurs have agreed a deal this morning for Savinho from Manchester City for 75 million plus 10 million in add-ons. I mean, Spurs just spending willy-nilly, but that seems like a good signing. And just quickly on this story, Hegebo, who plays for West Brom. Did you see this goal?
Nope.
Which has caused such controversy.
Screamer.
Have a look at this goal. No, not necessarily, but he has been given a 2-match suspension for that because he did successfully deceive a match official by handling the ball. No one saw it at the time. Referee didn't see it. Linesman didn't see it. And retrospectively, he's been handed a 2-match suspension.
He's been suspended.
West Brom are appealing it, saying, well, what, you know, it was a deflection. What else was he meant to do in that situation?
But the points, I don't know how the game finished, but whatever.
Well, they won 2-1.
So and the points stand. They keep the 3 points and it just carries on.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, it's funny that whole retrospective thing.
Don't like
it. Now, Carlos Alcaraz announced last night on social media that he is back after 4 or 5 months out with a wrist injury and growing his hair, plaiting his hair, unplaiting his hair. And he is back. The US Open champion will be back to defend that title at the end of the month. The US Open is going to have the biggest prize pot ever in tennis, £4.03 million to each winner, and £102,667 to first round losers. Because the players have been battling for a bigger share of the prize pot. And at the US Open, they have got it.
Some more.
F1 yesterday, speaking of money, Max Verstappen has been flirting with the move. Well, we thought he was flirting with the move away from Red Bull, but clearly he wasn't
putting his price up.
No, clearly at all wasn't flirting with the move away from Red Bull. Signed a new £70 million a year deal. How he announced it on social media yesterday, or how Red Bull Racing announced it, I thought was quite funny. Have a look at this.
It can't be right. It really can't be right. Max, does it look right to you?
No, there's meant to be a hyphen in there.
Ah, yeah, of course, yeah.
Hilarious. Made you chuckle. I mean, it's get less funny the fifth time I've seen it. They're pretty funny.
Hyphens are important.
Yeah, indeed. Needed.
And cricket, it's day 3 today of the Test against Pakistan. It was really bad weather yesterday. They didn't get actually on to play till 2:45 because of the rain. I mean, it's ironic, isn't it? The driest cricketist summer ever, and they couldn't get on because of the rain. It was good from England. It was, this is a Test match. Joe Root captaining. Joe Root, Mark II, the captain. He made his 50. They finished on 366 for 8. That's a lead of 195. Pakistan pretty toothless. I tell you who was really good, Harry Brook. 91 off 93 balls, and he'd probably be kicking himself that on his home ground of Headingley, he couldn't get his century, a bit like last year, but still a fabulous...
Yes, good knock.
Fabulous knock.
Nice knock. Oh, well done. And the play resumes today as long as the weather holds.
Yes, earlier today, as long as the weather holds. Yeah. And Rory had a good day yesterday as well, having had a bad weekend last weekend. Right. He's right up there as a share of the lead at the BMW, having gone out and done quite a lot of practising, one would think.
Yeah, definitely got himself back in shape. Always pleased to see Rory playing well. Jackie's been lovely. I'll see you tomorrow.
I will see you tomorrow.
Looking forward to it. Thank you for that. Now, Russia launched one of its most severe attacks on Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, this week. A Brit called Dan Baker moved to Kyiv in January to open his own language school. The deadly attack kept him up most of the evening. I'm pleased to say we can speak to Dan now, joining us live from Kyiv. Dan, thank you so much for being with us. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Yeah, how are you?
All right, this side. Talk to us about what the past few nights have been like.
Not just the past few nights. I mean, in the last 3 weeks, there's been 5 massive attacks. And, you don't really get used to them, but you find a way of dealing with it. The one on Wednesday, Thursday was particularly large, but in my area, it wasn't so bad. I think the alarm lasted for 8.5 hours that night, which was one of the longest we've seen for a long time, overnight.
And what is the process? I mean, we see the reporting here, but we're hearing from you firsthand as to what happened. So talk to the process. The alarm goes on your phone. Do you gather stuff up? Do you have a go bag ready and you head down to the shelter?
I don't. I live on the 26th floor, so by the time we get down, usually stuff has happened anyway. But it's there's a lot of people that don't go to shelters, and to be honest, I even noticed that some people injured who were in shelters, particularly on the last attack. So it's kind of, made my feelings quite clear on this. I would rather be at home. I have an animal with me. It's quite difficult to pack everything up and go to a shelter.
Right. Talk us through your family's decision to go back to Kyiv, because am I right in thinking you were living in Ukraine when the war broke out, you came back to the UK and then you went back again?
Yeah, that's right. We were living here for 5 years before the war started, so it had become, our de facto home. We bought an apartment, we had a car, we were working in a school, and it's just life. It's a beautiful place to live. Then the war started, which I think a lot of people who know me have been well documented. My ideas about it, we were quite stubborn and determined to stay. Mm-hmm. And it's just, we came back to England. My daughter's in really good education now, so that was the main thing, We got her settled down, she's in good education. And I decided that it was my time to come back, to be here in the country that I love. It sounds strange saying that, but I know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Look, we just saw some video, I think, that you filmed, and we're seeing now footage of fire crews cleaning up from the aftermath of a strike. You say that when the alarm goes, you often don't have time to get down to the shelter. Can you take us inside that moment? I mean, I guess after nearly 5 years of war, there is an expectation, as we've seen, that the missiles and drones will come. Do you still have that sense of fear when you hear the alarm?
I'll be completely honest with you now, without trying to sound blasé. Sometimes I don't even hear the alarm when it goes off. It's just become so much of a background noise. And on one of these 5 big attacks in the last 3 weeks, I actually slept through the whole thing and only found out about it until the next day when I was scrolling through my social medias and found out that lots of things have been destroyed. Yeah, I mean, it takes a relatively short time to get used to it, which is both amazing and terrifying at the same time, you know?
Yeah. The capacity of people to sort of rationalise their really dangerous situations is extraordinary. I do agree with that. Look, you're there with your family. You say your daughter's here in good education. You're staying though because you've got this language school and you're there.
I'm not going anywhere. Yeah,
right.
This is my home. I'm not trying to be, like I said, I'm not trying to be stubborn, but I feel like I can do more good here than I can in England. I think education is very important. And there's a whole new kind of outlook for Ukrainians that they're going to. Everybody who works within a public sector will need a certain level of English. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to help them, get to their stages that they need to get to.
Look, Dan, we've run short of time this morning, unfortunately. That's my fault. But I think we should stay in touch because obviously winter is coming. These attacks are continuing, and I'd love to be able to speak to you again as we go through the year, just to see how you're getting on and check in and just sort of get a sense of what's going on in the city. Thank you so much for being with us, Dan, and all the best to you. Stay safe.
Thanks.
All right, now, Prince Harry and several other famous people are going to find out how much they're going to have to initially pay the publisher of the Daily Mail later. A string of claims against Associated newspaper brought by the Duke and others were dismissed by a High Court judge earlier this year. Now, they had claimed that the publisher used unlawful activities to gather information about them, claims that the newspapers denied. Two activists in Hong Kong who organised annual vigils to remember the crackdown on Tiananmen Square in 1989 have now been convicted under the national security law. Li Chuk-yan and Chow Hang-tung pleaded not guilty to inciting subversion. Their sentence will be determined later. They could be imprisoned for 10 years. And the world's oldest living person has celebrated her 117th birthday. Ethel Caterham lives in Surrey and was born in 1909, 5 years, of course, before the First World War. Despite her life experience, she spent the past year making news firsts, including this that was last year on her 116th birthday when she met the King. Congratulations to you, Ethel. Let's take a look at the weather.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
I expect a cooler spell of weather with some heavy showers this weekend, but it should be fine in places. This morning there'll be some sunshine around and the rain is going to be more scattered than it was yesterday, with Northern Ireland, the northeast of England, Wales and the west seeing the most of it. Heavy showers will bring the risk of hail and thunder, especially in the southwest. It's going to be cool, temperatures below average. Afternoon's going to be drier across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, with the rain clearing away.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Stay with us because coming next, we're going to tell you about the giant python that has been declared cancer-free after undergoing a world-class operation.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent based here in Bangkok.
The only way they'll allow elections is if I'm inside jail or killed.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Free, wherever you get your news.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Segal?
I'm Conor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent. Sky News, the full story first.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky Security and Defence Editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
I bet right now
you often find yourself asking why. Why was a certain decision taken? Why did something happen? Why did they say or do that? I'm Neil Patterson, and it's my job as a journalist to find out why. Just explain why.
It's a difficult one.
Well, I mean, it's massive.
It's a very, very severe situation.
So if you want to make sense of this complicated world, Sky News' new podcast, This Is Why, is your daily fix. One story every day, and we can find out why together. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Trauma for everyone who witnessed what happened here hasn't gone away.
Devastation.
Greg Milam, Sky News, Manchester.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Now, as promised, a giant snake has been declared cancer-free after undergoing a world first to remove a tumour. The 15-foot-long python, who is named after the Hollywood star Jodie Foster, underwent a course of electrochemotherapy, which hadn't been done on a snake before. So let's find out about how they did it. Charlotte Bentley is one of the vets who looked after the snake at Chester Zoo and joins us now. Dr. Bentley, thank you very much for being with us. I can't quite see whether Jodie is behind you in that enclosure. I think they are.
She is. She is.
She's
just
there?
behind here, keeping me nice
Amazing.
and safe.
So look, talk to us about how you managed to do this.
So Jodie presented to us a little while ago because she had a lump on her lip, and we removed that lump, but our tests unfortunately showed that it was cancerous. So what we did is we got involved with the oncologists at the vet school at Liverpool and worked together to do both a quite extensive surgery and also electrochemotherapy to treat that cancer. And thankfully for Jodie, her recent checks have shown there's no signs of that cancer coming back.
I knew that Jodie was a big snake, but oh my goodness, I mean, how long is she and how heavy?
Yeah, she's quite a handful. So she's 15 foot, so about 4 meters long, and around just short of 50 kilos. So it's quite an undertaking whenever we're handling her. So doing procedures like that is a big ask. And indeed, we actually have to get two of our operating tables side by side to actually account for her size.
Absolutely extraordinary, beautiful animal. And how is she now after the surgery?
She's done amazing. She's been a very good patient in that regard. We were very fortunate that she didn't have any side effects from the chemotherapy, and she's gone on to make a full recovery and is back to eating just as we'd like her to, enjoying her chickens and her back to her usual kind of feisty self.
Oh, well, you've talked about the diet, so go on, tell us that again, because the line cut out slightly. What's on the menu for her today?
One of her favourites is chicken. She will eat a chicken whole without any problem. So Brilliant. Despite the work we've done with her jaw, she can manage them no problem.
So we have to think about if this is a world first. So I guess that vets, your colleagues across the world, have been looking at what you did and perhaps will try and use it on other snakes, other animals as well.
Yeah, hopefully Jodie can kind of lead the way a little bit in that regard. Electrochemotherapy is something that's relatively new in veterinary medicine, and we're very fortunate that the oncologists were able to help us out, deliver this for the first time in a snake. So fingers crossed, this means it has potential use for other tumours in other snake species across the world.
And look, I couldn't let you go because I'm sure people are screaming at the telly saying, why is she called Jodie Foster? Where did you pick that name?
It's a little bit of an unusual story. She used to just be referred to as juvenile female, which got initialed as JF. And then from there, somehow that has rolled into her being referred to as Jodie Foster, or just Jodie to her friends.
Jodie to friends. Well, very pleased that Jodie Foster, we're not friends yet, but maybe we'll be in the future, is doing better. I hope she enjoys her chicken for lunch later. And Charlotte, Dr. Bentley, thank you very much for being with us, and all the best to you and the team. And give Jodie our best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Extraordinary stuff. All right, well, that's all from the team here on Mornings. Coming up next, Leah Belletto will have all of your news headlines, including the latest on how much Prince Harry might have to pay in costs after losing that court case battle against the Daily Mail.